To order. I will read this, although it's not accurate. Pursuant to resolution number 2001-54, council members O'Connell and Peterson have requested permission to be absent, and Mayor Pro Tem Katakotis permission to be late. And now we'll call roll.
Councilmember Posey.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Katakotis.
Here.
Mayor Hardy.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan has not yet arrived. Councilmember Douglas has not yet arrived. Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Thank you. And unless there's an objection, then that will reflect that Councilmember O'Connell was given permission to be absent.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, do we have any supplemental communications?
We don't have any.
Okay, and do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do. We have Mike Hoskinson and we have Ralph Bauer. And I'd ask you to accept from the middle up here, and the timer will go off at 3. Mr. Bauer?
Like this managing position, right?
Yeah.
Four things. Kudos. Don't hear that very often. Number one, thank you for the senior center. Thanks for Fred for putting together financing. Come along very well. We appreciate the staff and the community service staff for the super job. Number two, the progress report on the homeless task force. We've met 3 times. We're doing a wonderful job moving forward. Kelly Fritzl, back there, Kelly Rodriguez, and Kelly Rodriguez doing a super job. The chief's been here every time, so the city has commitment. Before we get done, we're going to have to find this program meeting effectively with homeless. The big problems are housing, number one. Number two, don't make it so attractive to every homeless person who's going to show up. So we're moving along well. Third thing is something, and I'll pass this out. Not on parks that I talked about before. Central Park needs some attention to build out. One of the issues is certainly the mobile home park that's still there, which is really officially part of the park. And it was supposed to be there for a limited period of time, but I'd like to see us do some more things to the balance of the park. There's one idea, there may be lots of ideas around it. The idea is to put some kind of water park in. And finally, I read an article something called Smart City, and they'll pass that out also, and you might want to take a look at it, but it's an idea of doing some, taking advantage of the modern electronic age and doing some things with the city. Kansas City is doing something. I'll pass it out. You can read the article. Because you might put a committee together to see if something you'd like to look into. And I've already got a slogan that says, "Surf City is Smart City." So you might read this over and see what we can do about it. It's not that expensive. It looks like it's an interesting dividend. So you can do. Thank you for your time. Good luck. And keep hanging in there. Okay. See you later.
Good morning, Council, and everybody attending here. I'm Mike Hoskinson, member of the Planning Commission, but here as a private citizen today. I want to talk to you really quickly about something that's popped up in the news this week that will affect our city. The Obama administration and HUD brought forth a thing called the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule that makes it, if we take community development block grants, it will give the feds effective control of our zoning, it seems like, upon the first read. So I know we've had a transparency issue pop up of late. We'll plead with the council to take a look at how we deal with grants and publicize everything that we're even considering and all the strings attached, because as we all know, no money is free, and bring it forth to the public to see if they're amenable to the terms of these grants. So with that, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And unless there's anyone else in the public that would like to speak, that concludes public comments.
All right, so we have one item on the agenda here. It's a long item. It's just the strategic planning session facilitated by Marilyn Snyder. I'm just going to let you go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mayor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Delighted to be back. Thank you for having us. For those of you, particularly in the audience that don't know, my role is a neutral one. I'm not here as a consultant to say what you ought to be doing as a city. My role is to take you through the strategic planning process in order that you might update your strategic plan. So it's my job to make sure we start on time. The challenge will be making sure we end on time. There was a request by the council instead of going to 3:30, like we usually do, to be done at 1. So I ask your permission to move you quickly. I always move quickly, and I always ask you to slow me down if I'm going too rapidly, but this time I'm going to be needing to be aware of the timing to make sure that you all can be downstairs and have your box lunches or choose to take them off from downstairs at 1 o'clock. I will give you 2 breaks because that's a long time without having only 1 break. It's also my role to make sure everybody has a chance to participate. In every group I've ever facilitated, there's usually 2 or 3 that are the really verbal people, and I already know who you are. So you just need to know, I don't necessarily call on people in order. If somebody's already had a lot to say, I may wait to call on that person until I've brought others into the conversation. As usual, we'll vary the process between working as a large group, work in small groups, don't get married in your chairs, because you'll have a chance to work with other people. And I will give you a break, as I said, probably around 9:45, and then maybe another stretch break about 11. And otherwise, I ask that you not get up and take breaks unless you have to go to the restroom. You don't need permission for that. But don't, if you can avoid going to the coffee pot. Once one person goes to the coffee pot, it starts a parade and kind of breaks the concentration of the group. So just know that it's my role to shepherd you through this process and make some process suggestions, but I won't add ideas and I won't evaluate ideas because this is not my city, it's yours. And Gail Savoy is the recorder. You've had her a number of times. I'll have her describe her role and why you don't need tables.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you again. My role as a recorder is basically twofold. One, as Marilyn takes you through the agenda and gets you talking, we capture your comments on the sheets of paper. Whenever I get the opportunity, I go to the table back there and input every word you see up here into a document which you will receive after the meeting. And to that end, we ask that when you've offered a comment and we've written it up, read it over to make sure we've captured it correctly. Because you're not taking notes, this is your legal public document ultimately, and it's important that it is correct. And if it is not, please correct us on the spot. So,
Gail, because we're going to be brainstorming, as we always do at the first, there's a lot of recording, and for that reason I ask you to forgive my spelling. I'm usually a pretty good speller, but I'm going to help Gail out during the brainstorming. And I'm the worst, and Stephanie knows this, in front of librarians, teachers, and attorneys. I usually just lose it. So just know if I misspelled something and it bothers you, correct me on the spot, or spell check will pick it up. So that's one of your roles, is to watch the records, make sure it's accurate. Secondly, be really open and honest about the strengths and the accomplishments of the city. The benefit of having the council members here with the management team is that if you look at the strengths and the accomplishments and you look at the external factors, you are getting a whole lot of data all at once then to help you make decisions. So be really honest about what's going well, but also what's not going so well, because candor is what makes strategic planning work. And then when it's time to make decisions, the way we do that is by consensus, and as you know, consensus means general agreement or support. That might occasionally mean letting go of a favorite idea. You notice everybody's over there and you're over here. But I always say the same thing, don't just go along to get along. If you're going to walk out that door and be upset with something that came out, I want you to speak out, because this is where you can do something about it. And maybe the person that really is going to be frustrated has data that the rest of you don't, and so the group might change its mind. If it doesn't, then I ask you to let go and to move on. I always go over the definitions of strategic planning because some people call goals objectives, the others objectives goals or initiatives or strategies, and it's not that it's incorrect, it's just that it's different, and so it's helpful to have the definitions. Gail will keep this posted on the side so that you can look at it. I will refer to the definitions as we go along. By the way, I forgot to tell you, I just had to do it myself. Please silence your cell phones and avoid using your whatever tablets or or iPads or whatever, if I can keep you just concentrating here. If I know, for example, that Patrick, for example, and the chief need to have their alerts if there's some emergency. So if that happens, then I just ask you to have them silent and then take it out in the other room. So the strategic planning elements always start the same. And people say, but we already did a SWOT analysis. Well, a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, and external opportunities and threats, is a snapshot in time. So what you had as your SWOT last time is not your SWOT this time. Because the first question is, what are the strengths and accomplishments since we were last together 6 months ago? So that's new. And some of the weaknesses have probably gone away, and some of them may have come. And certainly what's going on externally it's just kind of amazing how many things go on externally that really do impact you. Do you all remember Y2K? You remember how worried people were? I mean, the world's going to fall apart. It was specifically at that time when people began to understand why I said you've got to look at external threats. It's like they didn't get it. And then ever since then, the threats, you know, I mean, you figure that 4th of July, ISIS was going to take as many of us out as they could. Unfortunately, we have really good people that made sure that that didn't happen. There's all sorts of things that impact us at every level. So first we look at what you've accomplished and your strengths. Then we look at the weaknesses. Those are things you can do something about because they're internal. Then you look at external opportunities. Now sometimes there's even things that are opportunities. I don't know whatever happened to AB2. Does anybody know what happened to AB2 related to economic or community development? And that looked like it had some possibilities for positives. Well, usually, maybe 1 or 2 people will know in the group some external opportunity, the rest of you won't. So it's also a learning experience. And then you also look at external threats. And when I'm asked, what do you mean by being strategic? I say you are aware of your own internal strengths and weaknesses, but you also are aware of external opportunities and threats. So with those opportunities, you capitalize on them. With the threats, you've got to be prepared for them. So this is always the beginning. You already have a mission statement. A mission is one sentence that says, in this case, why does the city government of Huntington Beach exist and whom you serve? And we haven't not done a vision. And at some point, I expect that you'll do that. A vision is usually a sentence as well, but it's a vivid, descriptive image of the future. What is it that you want to achieve? It's usually 5 years, 5 years down the road. You already have core values or guiding principles that guide the council, that guide the management team, that guide all the employees in working together, in working with the public, in working with other agencies. You already have 3-year goals, and these goals started in 2015, this year, the last retreat, and they go till 2018. But after you do the SWOT, you re-look at the goals, because goals are not set in concrete. And sometimes a goal is accomplished in a very short order and it drops off, or something else comes forward. And we never recommend more than 4 or 5 goals. Key performance measures is not something that we're usually asked to facilitate. We have a corporate client in Seattle that uses that, but the way we have you do objectives, they're always measurable, so it's not essential. So the key performance measures are usually a metric that says how will you know in 3 years that you have achieved those goals. But objectives are very specific and measurable. So what you do is you've got your mission that says why you exist. You have goals that say what do we need to do to address the weaknesses and threats while building on the strengths and opportunities. And then what you're going to do is then say what are the objectives. And the objectives are specific measurable outcomes that you agree together needs to happen. When I say agree together, in the old days, I say the old days, that was a long time ago, when I was first started facilitating after going through the Coro Foundation Public Affairs Training Program, what I found is that the council would meet alone, do a retreat, and of course it could be anywhere. That was the nice thing. We went to some just wonderful places because the Brown Act didn't say it had to be where you were located in the city. And they would go away and come back and give it to the management team, and the management team would say, well, we would have had some ideas. I mean, you might not have been aware of some things that are going on. There were some that did that. There were others that the management team would go away, come up with goals and objectives, hand to the council. And the council would say, what do you think we are, a rubber stamp for staff? So the trend began that the group came together so that you shared the knowledge, and together you realized that the council can't do any of this alone, and the management team can't do it alone. It's a partnership. So that's why when you look through the objectives, What you will be doing is drafting objectives as usual, but the council will be the ones that will decide, are those the ones that are going to go forward? And that's one of the changes in the agenda. The objective is very specific, by what date in the next 6 months, who will be accountable for what specific measurable results, so that you are results oriented and moving forward. Now I've been asked oftentimes, why 6 months? I used to facilitate 1 year objectives, and I discovered that people were real productive throughout the first 6 months and then just dropped off. Well, what I found out is that they were doing a good job of monitoring monthly for about 5 minutes, and they said, oh, we'll just put it in the agenda packet, and then the city manager will say we're on target or we're going to have to change something. But they didn't have the energy or the concern about it. And so I began to test the same clients in 6 months. And it was interesting. Gail and I were facilitating for Chevron Energy Solutions for about 5 years. And one time the group said, hey, could we do 1 year objectives? And I said, well, it's not my meeting, it's yours, you can do it if you want to. Well, when they were in small groups and they gave us objectives to write up under each of the goals, all of them were 6 months. They said, oops, well, I guess we're going to stick with 6 months. And that's because things are changing so rapidly. So we'll be, doing objectives as we usually do up until January. And then last but not least, which is something you've done really well, and hats off to Fred for his leadership in this, and also for the council's commitment, you're doing a monthly monitor. Which objectives are done, on target, need to be amended, and that way your strategic plan is alive. And so part of that is recognizing that strategic planning is like playing an accordion. Accordion makes no music when it's together. It makes no music when it's apart. It's only coming together and going back out. So you come together, and the musical part is the strengths and the accomplishments. And then you go back out with that music and what you need to do to continue to play a good tune. So that's the format for this agenda. Now, we start with brief introductions, and it's even briefer today. I asked not to do touchy-feely. I've never done touchy-feely in my life. But we usually ask a question like, what are you going to do for the summer? In this case, we're going to just ask for your name and your position, because people in the back, they may not even know who you are. And be sure you've got your name tags, so when they visit you. Then I'll just read your mission, your core values, and your 3-year goals, and then we'll start the SWOT. What are the strengths and the accomplishments since the January 23rd retreat? What are the city's current internal weaknesses? What's going on externally that will have an impact positively and negatively? You'll then review, revise if needed. We'll go through each of the goals. Now, the goals were set by consensus to be changed to that. Lori, after the break, that'll be clear up to the break. Lori will give her usual update. She does the best update of any. We work with over 100 cities, so I think I can say pretty well. She's the best I've heard. And she'll do that. Then we'll review the goals, because you've got to know what your budget is. Then you'll identify 6-month objectives. Then you'll do the follow-up steps to monitor and set your date 6 months from now, because that's how come you've always had good attendance, is that people put it on their calendars and then they work around it. Summary, closing remarks, and miraculously ends up winning. So you're going to be on a fast train. All right, so introductions, we don't need to have a chart. Just give your, and for just this part, stand up so people, because we've got a lot of people, you have more people coming to these than any of the probably 25 or 30 people that we're working with right now. If you stand up so they can see you and hear your name and your position.
I'm Jack Marshall, Director of Information Services.
Michelle Warren, Director of Human Resources.
Ken Domer, Assistant City Manager.
Lorianne Carroll Harrison, Finance Director.
Patrick McIntosh, Fire Chief.
Scott Hess, Planning and Building Director. Eric Peterson, City Council.
Michael Gates, City Attorney.
Mike Posey, City Council.
Brett Wilson, City Manager.
Jill Hardy, Mayor.
Stephanie Beveridge, Library Director.
Janine Laudenbach, Community Services Director.
Dave Sullivan, City Council.
Jim Catapultis, Mayor Pro Tem.
Rob Handy, Police Chief.
Travis Hopkins, Public Works Director.
Elisa Cutchin, City Treasurer. And Joan Flynn, City Clerk.
Good job. To the type A's. There we are, and we'll be down to here. So we're going to look at, first just read over the mission, core values, and so on. The mission statement, I've never put anybody on the spot and said, okay, tell me what it is and I'm going to cover that. But you should know your mission statement. And remember, it answers 2 questions. Why does the city government exist and whom does it serve? It It's its core reason for existing. The City of Huntington Beach provides sustainable, quality services to maintain and enhance our safe and vibrant community. In the core values or guiding principles, and they're not in priority order, the City of Huntington Beach values responsiveness, accountability, quality customer service, honesty and integrity, teamwork, fiscal sustainability, community involvement, and openness. Then your 3-year goals. And these goals are not in priority order, and I explain why so that those of you in the audience that haven't been with us know. I used to have groups do these in priority order and list them by number. And then I became the president of the state governmental board, and I was called before the Senate Finance Committee to testify for the goals in the budget. What do you think happens when you go to the legislature and you have goals in priority order? We, in that case, had 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What happens to them? They either get prioritized or they ignore the ones on the bottom because they think they're of low priority because they're on the list at the bottom. And I thought, oh, that wasn't a very good idea. And all of us on the board were appointed by the governor, as I was, for the legislature, and I never say which governor. And so we all had separate constituencies. And the constituencies, by and large, like the goals, but they hassled us on the order. That shouldn't be number 1. That shouldn't be any higher than the middle. That shouldn't be on the bottom. That should be at least second to the top. We spent a lot of energy on order. And just remember, these are a package to achieve your mission, to address your weaknesses and your threats. So the goals are improve quality of life, enhance and maintain the infrastructure, strengthen economic and financial sustainability, and enhance and maintain public safety. So these are the goals that right now we're going to start looking back on by first asking you what have been the strengths and the accomplishments in the last 6 months for the city. Now, we don't pass out the matrix that shows you the progress and the goals and objectives yet because we don't want you to be tied to that. There are lots of things that you've accomplished that aren't even on that list. We just want you to brainstorm so that all of you and those of you in the audience have a feeling for what are the things that have been happening for the city that are positive. So you're brainstorming. Now remember, the brainstorming means no evaluation. If somebody says something and you think that's not a strength, that's a weakness, wait till the next list. Also, we ask that if you could share those in a few words or phrases instead of sentences or paragraphs. And that way we'll get through a lot quickly. Now this always starts slowly with every group. And the reason for that is that people by nature are complainers and are not so likely to look at the strengths. And we want everybody to know all the good things that have been happening. So it'll start slowly, but we expect the pages to be full. So somebody, and these are internal, that means it's something that you can do something about. If you say the improving economy, that's external. These are things that you can control. And we've got more chairs right over here on this end, to my left, to your right. Okay, Michelle.
Implemented AB 1522.
Okay, and since this is a public record and they don't know what AB 1522 is, just...
That's state sick leave for part-time employees.
Okay, state sick leave for part-time employees. Okay, somebody else, another.
Successful Surf City Marathon.
And we'll tell you when we're ready for another one. Okay, somebody else, another.
1-3 Golden Hub of Innovation Awards.
Including one for libraries.
Including one for library services. Yeah, and one for community services. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Starting construction of Senior Center.
Becca, you got a call from a senior center member of your community talking about it and how excited he was and that the city has moved forward on the senior center. It's been wonderful to watch that happen. Okay, what else?
Parked nearly 1.5 million vehicles in each lot and parking structure.
Okay, what else?
Themed a $2.5 million stormwater grant.
Okay, what's another?
Celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Central Library and the 20th of the Oakview Library.
landed in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Twice.
Yeah.
Largest surfboard, most people on the largest surfboard. And it was the 25th anniversary for what branch?
20th for the Oakview branch.
Yeah, 20th, I'm sorry. Takes a little longer if it's a longer one. Okay, somebody else another. What else has been accomplished or strength?
Activated our Type 1 Urban Search and Rescue Team.
Our, which one? No.
Type
1.
Type 1.
Type 1 Search and Rescue Team?
Urban Search and Rescue.
Okay, I'll take one.
Completed downtown parking structure review.
What's another? Everybody?
Successfully negotiated with IMG and WSL.
Wait.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll make it a success.
Negotiated with
IMG and WSL for the 2015 US Open of Surfing. Okay, another?
Repeal the plastic bag ban.
Okay, that's another.
First city in the country.
Continue to maintain a balanced budget. Country or county?
Country.
Maybe that's your vision. Okay, what else?
Establish a homeless task force.
Okay.
There's
Establish an infrastructure committee. Citizens. Advisory. That's
You know, I should have asked this in the first minute. Are you all able to read in the back what we're writing? Can you see it? All right, if they're using it in the front, then you need glasses. Okay, what else?
Safe and successful 4th of July.
Okay, what else?
Received a federal grant to purchase firefighter safety equipment.
And how much money was that, Patrick?
Which one? We had several.
Then just add it, because one thing the public needs to know that you're not only asking for money,
70,000.
we're at 70,000. And when they read about a grant, they may think it's a couple of hundred or 1,000. And oftentimes it's up to $1 million.
Firefighter.
In fact, we had another grant. Yeah, we had a $2.5 million stormwater. But was this one, well, this one wasn't a financial one, was it, Janine? When you're in negotiations? Okay, all right, what else?
Revise the beach Edinburgh corridor specific plan.
Okay, go ahead, Fred.
Received $1 million grant for arterial pavement rehabilitation. Street recycling.
Received over.
Wait a minute. Some of them are longer, it takes longer. Travis, what's for the street, for what?
For street pavement rehabilitation.
Received over $30,000 in equipment grants for the scenic project.
Okay.
Which is CEN. This is the library.
Delivery of 15 police cars.
$30,000
SUVs.
in equipment grants.
SUVs?
Police SUVs.
For the Phoenix?
For scenic, CENIC
I take it that's a
project.
acronym.
Yeah, it is an acronym.
What else?
California
Yeah, go ahead.
Network Initiatives.
Certificate of achievement. Let me get that in.
I can get, yeah.
California.
Educational Network.
And what was that for, Lorianne?
Initiatives,
Excellence and financial reporting.
Consortium or something along those lines. We can check it online.
And there's also one for the budget, so the certificate of achievement for the annual budget.
Okay, something like streamline the general plan, saving the taxpayers about $200,000.
Great.
And that, tell me what that, who that went to or what it was for?
For the annual budget.
For the annual budget, thank you. Okay, what else? Some of you haven't said anything. What do you think?
Reinstated the finance committee.
Okay, what else?
Logged 56,000 volunteer hours for senior services.
56,000
volunteer hours for senior services.
Logged 57,000 hours. For the library. Yeah. 57,000.
Oh.
Yeah.
56,000 volunteer hours for senior services. Does anybody have any more hours that they'd like to say as volunteers? Okay, what else? Keep them coming.
Implemented multi-agency GPS-based dispatching.
Implemented real estate module
Fred,
for
would you pass
leases
those
and
matrices out?
concessions.
Just both directions,
Real estate
please.
module for leases and
Multi-agency.
concessions.
Listen, I just forgot the verb.
GPS-based dispatching.
Thank you. Okay, when you get the, yes, Mike, go ahead.
Legalized fireworks sales, which were distributed, I'm not sure, did anybody have a total on what the total sales were, what for nonprofits?
And it was to benefit not Mike?
Non-profits.
To benefit nonprofits?
Yeah. $500,000 plus. Yeah, $500,000 plus in sales.
And so that's not net, that's just.
That's gross, and then
Gross.
that'll be about half that.
Okay, so do you want to put gross or net?
$250,000 plus or minus net to nonprofits. Okay.
Received a $100,000 grant from the Women's Club of Huntington Beach to upgrade library facilities. Actually, it was a donation, so received $800.
Mike, help me, because I think I've started writing in one direction. Legalized fireworks sales to benefit nonprofits with $250,000 of sales.
$250,000 of net income to directly to nonprofits. Sales are probably over $500,000.
Oh, okay.
So directly to nonprofits.
Okay.
Stephanie.
Right. Okay.
It was a women's club of Huntington Beach.
Yes, for upgrading library facilities.
Okay, if we can avoid the side conversations, even in the public, with our backs to you, it's kind of hardening because we're hearing the rumbling. Yeah, Mike, I gotta be sure this is right, and then I'll get you. Eric, legalized fireworks sales to benefit nonprofits directly was $250,000 net.
Yes.
Let's say net of sales. Okay. Now go ahead, Eric.
Those are estimates.
New city attorney through negotiation had saved the city millions through Rogers Senior Center for negotiations with other property owners.
Good.
Received nearly $300,000 grant for Bartlett Park.
Okay, what else? Keep me coming.
Installed 70 new smart meters downtown, smart parking meters.
Are there any extra? Oh, good. Okay, I just want to go through. I'm sorry we don't have enough bits for all of you to see, but let me just tell you what we're doing here. Now that we've gone through this, and you can add anything else. Oh, good. We got some others. And we have another person coming that's missing. Okay, we've got a few here. If you want to just take what maybe one for two people on either side of you, then most of you will get to see this. Did they already pass them out? Oh, okay. All right. So here's how we do this. The goal is written at the top, then the objectives, the format, when, who, what. What you want to look at is the status. Everything that's done. This is your audit trail today for your, just like you have a finance audit, this is your strategic plan audit. Everything that's done, if it's not already been up here, put up here, should be added. But even if it isn't done, if it's on target, what that means is that when it was updated, which was, Fred, it was updated within the last month? In the last month, it may already be done. Or if it isn't done, you still mention the progress, because progress is also positive. Not everything gets completed. So what we want to make sure, and Fred, if you'll monitor this to make sure that we get all of them that are done up here, and if you think of something that's not on the matrix, then shout it out anyway. But we particularly want to make sure that everything that's on that matrix is there. Okay, somebody else? What else?
Completed the agreements necessary to get on the CalRED network for 1 gigabyte internet access at all library
Could you
facilities.
summarize that stuff?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Completed the agreement with Scenic to improve library internet speeds.
To reduce library fees?
To improve library internet speed.
I really missed it. Okay.
Started process to reuse Rogers Senior Center.
Okay, what else?
Received monthly updates on the senior center construction project.
And Lorianne will have you take us to the next one. Receive monthly updates on progress of the senior center. Is that right, Trevor?
Who was next?
Lorianne was.
Created a new CalPERS rate increase reserve on 1.3 million.
Where?
And is there a financial figure there?
1.3 million.
1.3 million. Okay, what else? Yes, go ahead.
Participated in a county-wide EOC drill, or Emergency Operations Center drill. And a tsunami disaster exercise.
This is what's called being aware of external factors and preparing for those. So you always look at the threats and you make sure you're prepared for them. Okay, what else?
The police department brought back the Citizens Police Academy.
Okay. All right, what else? What else do you see on the matrix?
Received, it has to be on the matrix.
No, it doesn't have to.
Received investment policy certification from APT US.
Wait a minute. And from whom?
APT US.
And what does APT
Oh,
mean?
Association of Public Treasurers.
The public doesn't know the acronyms on there. Public treasurers. Is it treasurers?
Yes. Received a clean audit opinion from external auditors.
I told you to fill up the sheets, you always do. Okay, what else?
Completed a review of frozen and unfunded positions.
In the police and fire department, or all citywide?
Safety and citywide, right, Michelle?
Frozen and what else?
Unfunded.
Council's taking steps in transparency in government.
And be sure when you give one that you read it and make sure we've got an accurate, and we have our agreement out. We don't, I'm gonna have to borrow the turquoise. Mr. Sketch, quit making in bulk the colors we need. That's an external threat and it's driving us crazy. Oh, well, we'll see how that is. Okay, what else? Yes,
New private foundation to assist for police funding.
Okay, that's an external though, you didn't form it, did you?
You did.
Oh, you did form it, then it can be internal, as long as you did it. Okay, go ahead, Trevor.
On target to meet the governor's 20% water reduction requirement.
And is it water reduction?
Water use reduction.
Water use reduction.
Over 65 25% self-checkout at the Central Library.
Okay, Fred, are you finding?
No, I think I've got the list.
I have one more. Completed a series of ad hoc meetings on Bartlett Park.
A series of
Ad hoc meetings
ad hoc
on Bartlett Park.
is that community meetings?
Yes, yes, they were public meetings, so.
Oh, I know. Give that to the other. Well, maybe.
The city created a new homeless task force.
Come on. Yeah, let's see, maybe we're at the end of what.
Maintain city's approximately 190 million investment portfolio, no losses.
We want to make sure that gets there. Okay, anything else?
Started the.
Okay, hold on.
I'm on homeless task force.
Oh, you're on the homeless task force. Okay.
It's already on there.
That was already on there, that's why. Go ahead, they might take that off. And then you protected the.
Maintained city's approximately 190 million investment portfolio with no losses.
Okay, and there was something else.
Started the process for the recycling market development zone, RMDZ.
Started the process.
For
We
the,
just talked about it.
can you say, Ken,
Really?
say what?
Started the investigation process? Initiated?
Started and initiated is the same. So it started the investigation process for the what?
Recycling market development zone.
Okay, the others?
Lori. Market development zone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So K is paid down in funded liability.
Okay.
Library received a grant for digital storytime development.
For rehiring medical.
How much is the grant?
$22,000.
Now, I'm sure we would have this filled 3 more times if all the departments said what you did. So, is there anything else citywide that needs to be in there?
Miscellaneous employee.
Stephanie, is that digital development?
Digital storytime development. Digital storytime.
Development? Okay. Now, this is a structured process, but it's flexible, and what that means, everybody with me? This is a flexible process, which means if you think of something in a couple of hours and it should have been on this list, you just tell Gail. I always count the positives, never the negatives, so remember this number. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52, applause. There's a lot of hard work. I would challenge anybody to come up with 52 on your own, but that's why you share the idea. All right, now we're going to look at what are the internal weaknesses, and I still want to stay with going into small groups just briefly, 3 minutes for that part, because sometimes people are not as comfortable saying the weaknesses out loud in the group. So the process that we've always used is I'm going to put you in groups. I think I'll probably put you in groups of 4. Somebody in the group who writes legibly, because nobody's going to read the card from your group. Somebody else is going to read it. Brainstorm internal problems and state them as problems rather than solutions. So it's not, we need this, we need that, which is the solution is lack of this, not enough that, inadequate this. These are internal, and the example I always use to help you see the difference between internal and external. An aging infrastructure is external. It will age. If you do not maintain an aging infrastructure, that's internal. So what we want to look at are what are your frustrations, your concerns, what are the complaints you hear from the public, what do you hear from other departments, and we want to get as full a picture as we can, because to really be good at planning, you need to also look at the weaknesses as well as the strengths. So I'm only going to give you 3 minutes because there's a lot of you complaining. and people don't like it. So I'm going to give a card to the first person in the group, but I don't know who writes the most legibly, so hand it to that person. Be kind to the recorder, state them briefly, don't give them long things to write. And be sure that the recorder gets a chance to say something too. So I'm going to give it to Jack, Lorianne, and Ken. Take your chairs and face the two of them. We need to get some space between you and Patrick. And Eric and Michael, face them, please. And Stephanie and Jill, face them, please. Jim and Robert. Okay, Ben. Okay, rest of the chair. Joe, you come together. Okay, internal weaknesses. Remember, we're not taking a break. We all do it together.
Give me the card. All right.
You're writing already.
That's not a problem.
Ongoing. It's not, I mean, like, we're
Remember, you're not evaluating, you don't have to agree with each other. You don't That's okay. Actually, I'm having to switch over now. Okay, everybody stop. You may not be done, but you'll be free to add things later. I'm going to come around and select this part. Get back to the half side, please.
It's the doctor. It's just a wrong sport.
Yeah.
Remember, this is not a break. Michelle, okay. All right, now I'm just going to shuffle these and at random give them to people to read out loud. Everybody with me? Okay, I'm going to just shuffle these, hand them out at random. I could accidentally hand you the card from your group. If I do that, don't say it's yours. The idea is a bit of anonymity. And I will try not to hand it to the recorders. Recorders, thank you for being recorders. After we get all this up, then I'll ask you if there's anything you forgot that needs to be put up here. So this was your only chance. Who's the recorder in your group? Either one of you. Okay, I'm going to go to each person that has a card. I only want you to read the first one on the card unless it's already up here. If it's already up here, then go to the next one. And what I'd like you to do is also notice if the group whose card you're reading did not follow instructions and they put solutions instead of problems, so they said, we need this, we need that. Instead, then I want you to turn it into a problem. Lack of this, not enough that. The reason for that is you're going to work with this list the rest of the day, and it's very confusing if it's a mixture of solutions and problems. Also, occasionally there will be things that will actually be external. In other words, you don't control them. If that's the case, we'll have you put a mark by it, and then when we get to the external factors, you'll be able to mention them. Okay, Ken, first one on the list.
Conflict between park beautification needs and the drought.
Okay. Who did I give it to? We're not having a break yet in the back. Okay, Michael?
Perception by some staff Perception by some staff that financial challenges.
Okay, next group.
Unrealistic expectations for project turnaround time.
Okay, next.
Lack of resources/staff to meet demand for city services.
Okay, next group.
Deteriorating roads.
Okay, now if there's a lack of maintenance of those roads, that would be internal.
So lack of maintenance is deteriorating.
That's awful, and he has to be the one to say
For better succession planning. Lack of succession planning?
I don't even know if I wrote deteriorating right, so. All right, next. Michael?
Some departments feel they get less support than.
Gail, hold on. It's succession. It's succession.
Succession.
And Michael, that was less support?
Less support than safety.
Than safety? Okay.
Okay, I think I got it. Okay, who's next? Outdated workflow processes.
Okay, next.
Lack of timely community outreach options to ensure public has advanced.
Dig a little slower. Lack of timely.
Community outreach options.
Community outreach options.
To ensure public has advanced notice.
Okay.
Low police staffing levels.
All right, next. Is that
I did. It's enough. 1, 2, 3.
Inability to reach RENA, Regional Housing Needs Assessment, numbers with development.
All right, next.
Lack of support for critical needs and programs.
Can you read?
Inability to reach regional housing need assessment numbers with development.
Okay, next.
Unrealistic expectation of discretionary financial resources available.
Unrealistic expectations. Okay.
Of discretionary financial resources available. Okay.
Lack of citywide centralized records.
Okay, next.
Lack of resources for deteriorating park infrastructure.
Great.
I know, it's all out.
And to continue.
Show me the money.
And to continue with that one. Potential loss of funding because of Poseidon.
Wait, Gail.
It's projects.
Wait,
Yeah,
Gail.
potential loss.
Oh, I'm sorry. They have it.
Okay, just the last after records or record management.
Records or records management? Right.
Okay, where are we? I think Ken.
Potential loss of funding because of Poseidon.
Is that external? Can you control that? I think we put a mark on that when we get to external.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
okay, so,
Another one?
lack of or need for new, improved information network infrastructure.
Information infrastructure?
Yes. Network infrastructure. Information network infrastructure.
Okay. I'll take the next person.
Okay.
I think those external kids are outside our control.
Yeah.
They sure are having fun though. Okay, now where are we? Ken, are we back to you again?
Sure, I'll take it. Employee resistance to change.
And Michael, did I get the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Who else?
Oh, sorry. This one is sort of up there, but where it says some departments feel they get less support than safety, this one specifically talks about funding of. So I don't know if it's separate or part of that.
It probably is separate ones.
Some departments get less funding.
So this will, well, no, here's what it says. Overemphasis on funding of public safety operations.
Okay, that's stated differently, so they're related, but I don't think they're exactly the same. Okay, Dave, do you have any more?
Yeah. Lack of accessibility for alternatives online.
So this might be falling behind industry standards and technology.
All right, where are we? Travis, how are you? Ken.
Need to improve Wi-Fi infrastructure in city facilities.
So that's a solution.
Yeah, lack of Wi-Fi infrastructure in city facilities.
Well,
don't have it, but no.
Lack of improved, no. Inadequate, okay. You know what, there's a lot of side conversations, so if we could just wait, because it's really hard in this room. And this is a great room, but just hear it. So inadequate, say it again.
Wi-Fi infrastructure in city facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Continued lack of resources to maintain infrastructure.
Okay, next.
I'm done. I'm out.
Okay, next.
Lack of updated equipment and technology.
Equipment in technology?
And
equipment and technology. Okay, Travis?
I'm done.
Okay, back to you, Ken.
I'm done.
And Michael? Done? Everybody did? Okay. Now, did anybody think of any since we started writing? Or maybe you thought of it in a small group and thought, oh, I'm not going to say that. Say it, because how do you address it if you don't make it obvious? What else? Okay, we don't count this. How many positives did you have?
We have one more.
Oh.
You can probably see it is different. It's our lack of concise public records act process.
Lack of concise public records.
Those are items.
Or, you mean all the departments being able to speak to each other, is that what you know?
No, we handle it right.
Did you say act, is that a?
Lack of.
Concise, you said.
Public Records Act process. Public Records Act delivery process.
Was that ACT?
Yes, ACT.
Can you give an example for that?
So in our, because we're decentralized, if you want public records, and it might be something that is over 6 departments, all 6 have to respond, and you don't know if that's, it's difficult to tell if everybody got it.
So it's a lack of integration.
Thank you.
Okay, lack of integrated public records across departments, right? Stephanie?
There's low police staffing levels up there. It's just general low staffing levels.
Yeah.
Low staffing levels throughout the city.
Yeah, every department has low staffing levels.
Anything?
Okay, how many positives were they?
52.
52. Okay, now we'll go to external factors. You don't have control of those. Gail's going to set those aside, not going to start writing the external, so just know it's just me. I'll be a little slower than doing it. And external factors can be at any level. They could be local, they could be state, they could be national, they could be international factors or trends. But I always have you start with the positive. So the positive thing. Now this is not a wish list. You're looking out a year ahead and saying, what are some trends that we're seeing? And again, this is so you're sharing information, and some of you will know about trends that others won't even know. Maybe there are grants that are available. You think the economy's going to improve, whatever. But don't make it a wish list. It's got to be something you know is going to happen, or there's a good chance. So what's going on externally at any level? A balanced state budget. What's another?
Pacific City nearing completion.
Pacific
City nearing completion.
Okay, what's another?
Increased public participation.
Okay, what else? Economically, demographically. So look at every level, economically, demographically, politically, socially, environmentally.
Increases in state one-time funds.
Increased tourism spending.
Okay, what else?
Increased public involvement with homeless issues.
Increase in sales tax revenue.
Okay, what else?
Warm weather.
Warm weather.
Say sales tax and property tax revenue.
Right, what else?
Possible El Nino year.
We've heard that before, haven't we?
Sometimes it's a little.
That's a
You don't get that on the rest of it.
KABC covers the 4th of July parade.
Yeah.
ABC?
KABC. KABC. Local network.
Visit Huntington Beach's the partner with Visit Huntington Beach. It's always hard for me to explain what that is, and it's the Marketing and Visitors Bureau, but they're positive influence.
Worldwide
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah. Because sometimes there are institutions that are located in your, or organizations that are such a benefit, you look.
Yeah, tremendous benefits coming down. Of course, I just think the more promotional success for the city on not only a national basis but international.
Okay, what are other external resources that are helpful to you? What's going on?
The Special Olympics World Games in Southern California.
It's just in Southern California?
The Special Olympics World Games. So we're participating because it's
in Southern California. Okay, what else?
Increased opportunities for cooperation in the library community.
Okay.
100-year anniversary of Boeing.
What year?
100-year anniversary of Boeing.
Anything technologically that benefits the city? Technologically? Anything else demographically, politically, socially, environmentally? What other assets do you have that attract people, help the city? Other sources of funding? Are there grants still going to be coming out?
Okay, along the line of VHB, but VHB just started a summertime shuttle service.
Okay.
Tourists around the
Okay.
city.
All right, that's certainly an external factor.
Is it VHB?
VHB. Okay. Anything else before we go to threats?
The big board, Guinness Book Big Board Record gave us tremendous exposure.
Guinness World Record.
Yeah.
Is the Guinness big?
Guinness World Record.
I think Guinness World Record
for the Epic Big Board, right?
Yeah.
Completion of wayfinding effort. Wayfinding, it's
It gave great exposure. Do you think it will continue? Because we're talking about coming.
Continue, yes.
A wayfinding
effort.
And positive exposure, Janine, right? Did I write this correctly? The Guinness World Record won by Huntington Beach.
Epic,
You could put,
Epic.
yeah.
Big
So where
Board.
you cross out the name, just put Epic Big Board, right?
Epic, PIC.
Second cross out.
You crossed out.
Right over gauge.
Yeah.
Above gauge.
Yeah, Epic Big Board, Epic Big Board, yeah. It's in big surfboard.
I'll put surf. Okay, remember this is a public record. Okay, it's the Guinness World Record Epic Big Board surf. We'll continue to get the same positive. Okay. Anything else, Michelle?
2015 U.S. Open of Surfing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anything else, Joe?
Having a previous mayor elected to the Assembly, state assembly.
Okay.
Okay, others?
Thinking about the schools, continued success, high school athletic teams.
How are your schools?
And then Ocean View School Board, or Ocean View School District, completing facilities issues. I think we'll complete it, and that's a positive.
Facility issues. All right. Now, nobody has trouble thinking of threats, just like nobody has trouble thinking of weaknesses. Before you get to that point, let me just talk with you a bit about external threats. External threats means you can't control them. What is currently an external threat?
Shark.
Sharks. Yeah, sharks. All right, but I want you to pretend for a moment that you own BlackBerry, the company. What was the external threat that you ignored? Touch technology. I think I used that before.
Yes.
All right, what what else is going on in terms of, like we talked about, if you own Eastman Kodak, you didn't pay attention to what? Digital, even though they were part of digital development, they didn't stay with it. Do you know that years ago, Xerox was the one that actually came up with the fax machine and they let it go? The key is look at what's going on externally that you need to be prepared for. And sometimes there are things you don't even want to put on the board, and those are the things you really have to be prepared for. So what are the external threats that could happen in the coming year that you better prepare for?
More state regulations or requirements, or tax increases, things like that. You know, impacting local cities.
I'm serious about the sharks.
I know, I'll put
Sharks definitely need to.
We'll put down the sharks. She'll draw a picture.
Unstable global economy.
Yes, with an exclamation point.
On the sharks of the economy.
Oh, yeah.
El Nino.
Yeah. Earthquake.
Earthquake.
The drought.
Drought.
Increasing the level of cyber attacks.
Leon Panetta said the #1 threat in the United States is cyber attacks. Just think about what happened when the market was closed for those several hours.
Lack of,
I started talking. You got it.
lack of substantial fiber optic and Wi-Fi capability in the city of Huntington Beach.
I-405.
Fiber optic.
Fiber optic and Wi-Fi capability throughout the city of Huntington Beach. What about the I-405?
Construction.
Hold on just a minute. People are always fast on threats.
Rising crime rates, yes.
Lack of substantial fiber optic and Wi-Fi capability. Is that right, Barbara? Okay, what else is a threat?
Healthcare costs.
High healthcare costs.
The I-405 construction, so I-405, possible I-405 tollings and continuous access.
Okay, what else?
PERS rate increases.
PERS rate increases.
Possible I-405 tolling.
Tolling, you said.
Yeah, and just tolling.
Now, what was an external positive that said you were preparing for a possible external threat?
Already setting aside.
And
Well, the
continuous
training
access.
Continuous
Thank you.
Say that again, Mike?
Already setting aside money.
Oh,
Natural
for the PERS
and
rate.
man-made disaster.
For the PERS rate, yeah, that was good. But you were having a tsunami drill,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And an emergency preparedness?
Yes.
Emergency operations.
Operations. So the emergency operations is certainly already been mentioned. But the tsunami in particular, having facilitated for years for Redondo Beach, that's always one of the things that's on their list. I mean, I've been with them probably 15 years for
So I would do
everything.
earthquake /
National and man-made.
Climate
Both.
National and
Climate
man-made
change
disasters.
Pardon?
National and man-made disasters.
Yeah.
Oil spill. Okay, what, oil spill. Oil spill. What else?
Regional water board and air board mandates.
Increased demand on emergency services.
And what was, besides regional water board, what was the other one?
Air quality board.
And air quality board.
Fire.
Senate 331.
Yeah.
Did I hear fire?
Wildfire, yeah, I mean.
Living in Oakland, we lost 3,400 houses and 25 people in one fire. I mean, I'm just like this. Wondering what's that. Okay, what else?
We're talking about Senate bill.
Senate bill.
Senate bill,
Okay, and that's a threat.
331.
Okay, anything else?
Misinformation on social media.
Okay, others.
Negative legislation for policing, national and state level.
Okay, anything else, Lori?
State legislation to deny reimbursement to cities or development loans.
Yeah, I think the state legislation.
Just in general.
Is that a potential, or is that already a fact, Lorianne?
It's a potential as far as I know.
Okay, so then it's
AB 113 is the.
AB 113? Okay, so what I've got then is potential state legislation to deny reimbursement to cities for redevelopment loans?
Yes.
Okay, what else?
Regional gas tax and Prop 42.
Okay, anything else before you do the
Decrease
rest?
in housing market,
Decrease in the
housing value.
Decrease in housing value, okay?
Okay, the impacts of Proposition 47, I need to get this one.
Proposition gas tax and Proposition 42.
Are they the
And
same?
who's,
Kind of.
Okay.
somebody started another one?
I did.
Okay, Barbara.
The impacts of Proposition 47, which is releasing inmates early.
That's on that rising crime rate, probably.
Oh, it is.
No, that's different.
But you don't have 47 now. So we'll put 47 specifically.
Yes.
And early release?
Of inmates.
Right.
The amount of DUIs,
Rising.
drunk driving,
Drug driving, rising rate of drug driving. Anything else you can't control that's a threat economically, demographically, politically, socially, technologically.
I don't know if it's the right place, but we're gonna have a mass exodus of employees, I think.
A mass exodus of employees. Is that because of retirement? Okay.
Yeah,
Just-
demographic shift.
Otherwise, the public reads that and think, what's going on, if you're having a mass exodus of employees.
I don't know if mass.
Retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for young retirement.
It might not be mass.
Okay, Robert.
Somewhat covered in Prop 47, but just the reducing or reduction
Excuse
of
me, you guys can't hear Robert if you're talking. Please, go
the
ahead.
decriminalization of drugs.
Yeah, decriminalization of drugs.
Demographic shifts.
Yes. Demographic shifts, losing our youth.
Rising interest rates.
Rising interest rates can happen in the next year. Increased homelessness. I'm hearing these, I'm not making them up. You may not be hear other people saying it.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So now what we're going to do now, in light of the SWOT, while it's fresh in your mind, I'm going to have you look at each of the three goals and ask you, 3-year goals, and ask you, are these still a priority? Now, they were formed by consensus, including the management team and the council. To be changed, there would need to be consensus. Is it still a priority in Huntington Beach to improve the quality of life?
Yes.
To enhance and maintain the infrastructure? Is that going on? To strengthen economic and financial sustainability?
Yes.
And to maintain and enhance and maintain public safety?
I think the last one should incorporate all the city staff, not just public safety. Because, I mean, we heard from it here, we hear from it all the time, that it's all the departments that need it. I mean, that's definitely very important, but Public Works needs it, Lori needs someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's about departments. I think that when we talk about improving quality of life, that's where.
Well, that quality of life is so big.
But when it comes to writing, like, in the past, when we've written the goals, no, not the goals, the objectives, that's where we've put all the other things.
That sort of goes to the point that was made here, that not everyone's getting the same representation. That's why it's more public employees. I mean, public safety is definitely important, but all the public employees.
So, what about some sort of?
Michelle said public and public service.
Yeah.
Yeah, so enhance public
Services.
Public safety and services?
Yeah.
So it's not either or, but both and. It's not something like people are wanting to get rid of safety, it's just they're wanting to broaden it.
Why don't you say that would be
Correct.
Well, should we broaden it or add another goal?
Add another goal.
To enhance public services?
Just broaden it.
I kind of like it.
Adding another goal is doing the same thing. You're lumping everyone into one because that. So I just think it.
Okay, right now we've got enhance and maintain public safety, and doesn't seem to be a problem with keeping that. It's just that you want the focus to be all public services, not just public safety. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Does that make sense? That's the group. It's got to be consensus.
Well, I'm talking and Jim's talking.
I see it as a separate goal.
Combined goal.
That's your goal.
Well, we're not limited to 4. You can put
Actually, I only limit you to 5. There's something about when people go to 6, all of a sudden they come back, remember we have too many goals. Well, I suggested 4 or 5. If you want, one way to do this is have a separate goal, a temporary separate goal, and have the people that are interested in that work on that one, and then when they bring those objectives back, see whether they just naturally already fall under one of the goals that was there. Does that work? So that you're addressing, what do you mean by would it be enhance and maintain public services? Is that what the goal would be?
I just have a question on the public services. Are we, when you're speaking about public services, does that mean every other department other than public safety?
Well, public safety is part of that. I'm just trying to include the rest of
No, I
the
understand what I'm
departments
asking.
in that.
I'm asking because there's some departments that are really in need of new equipment or new
But that would be
hiring.
infrastructure.
No, well, infrastructure is the actual physical asset.
He mentioned
of that.
Lorianne, she's got the finances up there.
I think if you add enhance and maintain public services, it's redundant in all 4 of those goals.
Right.
Okay, what do you think? Would you agree that public services are reflected in all of these?
Yeah.
I think we cover all of our departments through that.
But it's not specifically laid out there.
Right.
I don't see it.
Goals are broad statements of
So what if we,
intent.
what if we brought
Specifics of the
quality of
objective.
life, improve quality of life and public services?
Well, you just enhance and maintain public safety and
services, public services.
It can be this, 4 can be the same thing. Or it can have public services.
You'll have objectives under public safety and you'll have other objectives that don't relate to public safety. And that's, it's up to you.
Here's the thing, is that the objectives that then, like, 3 of the major functions and departments, or 4 of the major functions and departments of our city are covered in those last 3 goals. And the quality of life one was for kind of everybody else. And so, you know, we're looking at it from the city perspective of, you know, did we cover all the departments? And yes, we have, but this is also the goals where we go out to the public and say, here are our major goals.
Well, Eric made a comment about improved quality of life and might be too big. So if you were using that goal and saying it differently, how would you say it?
Well, when we look at the objectives from last year, in that particular goal, it was, you know, community engagement, post-cheek annexation, staffing levels and service delivery, and Bartlett Park. So that is where we put the.
But also staffing levels on service delivery to the public is different from staffing levels.
Right, I was just trying to.
Internally.
Yeah.
Quality of life is external and is internal.
Yeah.
So for example, I think, just off the staff perspective, I feel comfortable that my needs could be covered under economic and financial sustainability for sure. So I'm always pleased that that's there. But for example, a department like Jones or a department like Jack's could be internal support departments or like HR that doesn't so neatly fit into any of these. Maybe Jack's needs are considered under infrastructure, but I think internally when we think infrastructure, we're thinking more public works. Right. And so I think, and like for the city attorney's office, right? Are you improving the quality of life? You're helping us achieve all those goals. I think the.
So actually, I'd like to hear from those departments that aren't specifically up there, although I'm going to exclude from the services. But the smaller departments, do you feel we need another goal, and how would you phrase it?
I think we heard in the public that the staff feels that they're being possibly overlooked because the emphasis has been on public safety department. So I think having them recognized as being equally valued And there are certainly employees on council who are there to ensure that we pump up public safety, but the village isn't a champion of the other departments per se. And I think Eric's right, I work in public works, and it doesn't matter how much money they have if they don't have bodies, or if they have bodies and no things to work with. You know,
is this a staffing goal that you're talking about?
So,
is this
yeah, so that we
staffing?
had something in the
But you
past.
used to have in the past, attract, develop, and retain quality staff. And is the staff what you're talking about, the staffing levels? Because you said, remember you said it's not just public safety that doesn't have enough staff, it's all departments?
I think it's more about the service to the community as opposed to the staffing levels. I think staffing levels is
There's something
specific.
about, from the past, that we used to have that we need to rephrase instead of being so specific about staffing levels. To get more about the service.
I agree.
It's like the information services infrastructure that we need to improve service. That really hasn't been effectively covered, I think.
Well, I think in the past few you had enhance and maintain public services. Because it's a broad
internally and externally.
Internally and externally.
Yeah, something like that instead than talking specifically about staffing, because in the objectives, you can put staffing and those objectives can change.
Okay, all right, we need to make a decision on this. If we had till 3:30, we could talk a long time about when we're gonna have to make it, you're gonna have to make a decision quickly. So at this point, it doesn't seem that there's a disagreement on the need for support for other staff, for other departments, right? But that's not the whole thing. It's really about the service, and the staff is the specifics to help the service. And are you talking about services or programs, or you want to enhance public services? Enhance public services? Well, then say what it, that's internal support for each other, right?
Instead of public services, what if we say city services?
Yeah.
And that sort of highlights what
Oh,
we're
okay,
doing.
does that work better?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's better, yeah.
All right, so is it enhance and maintain city service?
City service delivery.
Yeah. Oh, city service delivery.
How do you like that?
Yeah.
Enhance and maintain city service delivery.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Gail writes better than I do. Gail, you gonna come over here? All right, so we got an agreement, we're gonna have that as a fifth goal. So the reason why that's important is that I'm gonna divide you into 5 groups. We have to have councilmen, this is a partnership. That's why you have to have both. In those small groups, there'll be at least one council member and management team working together. So Gail, could you come over and just do this? And have a second choice in mind, because you're only going to have a chance, as always, to work on one goal. And what you'll be doing, and I'll explain the process for doing it after the break, you'll be developing draft objectives to bring back after the break. So we have the following. In each case, I'm going to ask first which council member would like to be in this group. In group process, there's a synergy that comes with 3 or more. 2 people just don't seem to have the same amount of synergy, that's all I can say, for developing the objectives. So I want to be sure I have at least 3 in each, and we have enough people to do that. So which of the council members is going to work on improved quality of life, drafting objectives? Okay, and Jill will do that. And now who on the management team? I assume Janine and Stephanie. Okay, and Jen. All right. Enhance and maintain infrastructure. Which council members can do that? Okay, Mike. And who's going to work with Mike on infrastructure? Travis. And let's have one other person. Okay, Alyssa. Do I say that correctly? Alyssa. All right. Strengthen economic and financial sustainability. Eric. And who's going to work? Okay, Ken and Lori Ann. All right. Enhance and maintain public safety. Jim. And who's going to work? Jim, Robert, and Patrick. Enhance and maintain city service delivery. And Barbara, Michelle, Fred, and now Dave, which one do you want to work on?
I'll go on the financial.
See, you've got enough council members, you can have more than one. So you'll go on the financial. Who else? Who else didn't put their hand up? Where are you, Joan? Joan's on the last one. Okay, does everybody have a group? All right, now look for just a minute. Hold up your hand on improved quality of life. All right, those 3, after the break, you'll sit in those 3 chairs, okay? Enhance and maintain infrastructure. Who is that? 1, 2, 3. You'll be in the next 3. Don't move your chairs, just move your bodies. Strengthen economic and financial stability. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, Scott, I didn't see your hand go up on that one. Okay, so then you'll be the next 5. Enhance and maintain public safety. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you're gonna switch?
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why don't you all? Yeah, right in here. There's enough chairs. Enhance and maintain city service delivery mode of command. This is to remind you who we. Now wait a minute. We only have what, 2? Oh, 3. Okay, your 3 will be here. Okay, so in summary, because after a break you always want to summarize. How many positives were there? 52. A list of weaknesses, and there's a poster over here. You'll be looking at those and using those. You looked at external factors, positive and negative. You reviewed and revised goals. So after the break, we're going to have Lorianne make the city budget presentation, because you have to do all of this in light of what's your money situation. So that will be a presentation for about 15, 20 minutes now, right? I got to do more. So we're going to have this. I said you got to give you a break at a quarter till. You're doing really well. It's 45 till. So take a break. Use that clock. Come back at 10 minutes till. Please be ready to go and sit in the seats where you are. You're doing really well. We're right on target.
So now we'll turn to the presentation of the 2015-16 proposed budget, which is for the fiscal year that starts on October 1st. This will be a high-level overview. We'll go pretty quickly for the sake of time. There'll be another presentation on July 20th as well. So there'll be another opportunity for you to hear what's contained in the recommendations for next year's fiscal 2015-16 budget. So with that, I'll get started. The theme of the budget for the fiscal year starting October 1st is making it count. We went into this budget season with the idea that every single dollar, which is limited, obviously, we don't have infinite resources, needs to make an impactful benefit to the community on a lasting basis. And so that was basically the driving force behind all the recommendations that we'll share with you this morning. In terms of an overview, we'll discuss the highlights contained in the 15-16 budget. We'll touch on CIP and infrastructure. There will be another study session held specifically on that topic, so I'll just go over that at a high-level way. The status of the general fund reserve, we'll give you an update on that. A discussion of unfunded liabilities, which is always a major topic that impacts the budget, and so we'll get into that. We'll discuss a little bit state budget impacts and how they'll affect this fiscal year's budget, and then an overview of the budget calendar. In terms of making it count, one of the things that impacts cities and counties and every government at every level is making decisions based on short-term resources and not really having a longer-term outlook. The leadership here at the city, our city council, and also at the executive team level, we definitely have a forward-thinking approach. We usually try to develop recommendations that have a lasting impact that we feel are going to be sustainable in the long run, so that we're not dealing with fiscal deficits from one year to the next. And so what we've tried to do in these budget recommendations is maximize the limited resources to fund the areas needing it most, and especially based on council feedback. So public safety, quality of life programs, financial sustainability, and infrastructure. So where is the 15-16 proposed budget in terms of funding sources? The all funds budget is $344 million. This is a very slight increase of less than 1% from the current year adopted budget, and it's primarily due to a new grant in the public works arena associated with hazmat reduction and pollution remediation. And so pretty much a stable all funds budget. And for those of you in the audience that are new to budgeting, all funds is the general fund and all of the city's enterprise funds. So water, sewer, refuse, etc. The general fund, which is the part of the budget that we tend to focus on the most because it can be spent on anything and it's not a restricted source of funds, totals $216.5 million. That's a $6.6 million increase, or about 3% from the current year adopted budget. So modest growth and slight to modest growth in those categories. In terms of the general fund highlights, you have 14-15 adopted budget versus the 2015-16 proposed. You'll see that general fund revenues are experiencing, or we are projecting that we'll experience
a modest growth there to $216.5 million. In the current year, we did use set-asides, $3.4 million specifically for the development and construction of the senior center. And those were set-asides that were specifically cobbled together from prior year ending surpluses. And so we set those aside for the purpose of helping to finance the senior center. We will have spent that down in 2014-15. But in the 15-16 budget, there are no set-asides used to finance any construction. And so we have just general fund revenues of 216 versus general fund expenses of an equal amount for a balanced budget. So again, the budget for 15-16 is a balanced budget. It shows about a 4.5% general fund revenue increase. In addition, there is a 2% labor adjustment that is reflected for full-time employees only in the baseline that's been being presented to the council. It also includes fixed cost increases that cannot be avoided. For example, PERS, and we'll get into more specifics in terms of the dollar values here. But PERS increases, workers' compensation, insurance premiums have also gone up, and utilities. Am I doing? No, that's good. The equipment replacement budget has also been increased by $500,000 for a total of $5 million. This is an area where we're always struggling for resources, and our equipment replacement usually get more in requests than we have funding available. And then another major highlight of the budget is increased funding and staffing for public safety and related capital equipment and technology investments of about $4 million. So in terms of our resources and the amount of money that we have to play with, what's contained in the general fund revenue? Our largest category is property tax, as you'll see here, at about $84 million. Sales tax is another major category, followed by utility users tax. We also have good growth in our transient occupancy tax. That revenue category has reached one banner year after another, which is great. So our tourism and convention business is still booming, which is good. And so we're able to project about $216.5 million in revenue for next year. In terms of specific year-over-year growth projections for property tax, it's about a $4 million increase. TOT at about $1.5 million. Sales tax is an increase of $4.4 million. It's important to note that that includes a one-time accrual of $2 million that's associated with the state unwinding the infamous triple flip, which I won't get into the details of, but it is a one-time funding source from the state of about $2 million, and that accounts for almost half of the projected growth in sales tax, but it's not recurring, so it won't happen again in 16-17. And then in some revenue categories, we are experiencing a decline from current year. In licenses and permits, it's not that development isn't still going on. It is. It's a matter of timing as to when permits are pulled and plan checks are done, et cetera. And so from the current year base, which reflected even more activity, it reflects a reduction. Gas tax transferred to the general fund, which is a pretty reliable source of revenue for many, many years. That's transferred $900,000 has been eliminated due to state cuts. So that was a surprise, and that's recurring from what I can tell. And then the new water restrictions will also have an impact on our utility users tax revenue, which goes into the general fund based on water consumption. And so we're projecting a decline of about 20%, slightly over that for water utility users tax revenue. On the expense side, these are the main highlights. We have about $10.3 million in expenditures once you remove one time. So if you recall, in the current year, the budget was $209.9, yet we did have about 3.5 in one times, and so the starting base for next fiscal year was $206.2 million, and then we built upon that. This is just a high-level summary. There are hundreds and hundreds of lines of ins and outs, but these are the main categories. You'll see that the CalPERS increases of $3 million are one of the largest categories in addition to the 2% labor adjustment. On the CalPERS side, 2015-16 represents the first year of a 5 to 8 year ramp up in PERS costs that we have no control over. And that's not due to benefit enhancements, it's not due to additional staff, it is due to the fact that CalPERS has changed its funding methodologies for their plans. And so CalPERS has developed 4 different new strategies for making sure that statewide all of the pension plans are better funded. And so they're requiring more contributions from all of the employers into the plans. 15-16 represents the first year of that ramp up. And so it's a pretty significant cost there at $3 million. Merits and skill pays that employees have become eligible for from the current year to next year is about $500,000. Some workers' compensation increases are factored in. Our utilities they were flat for about 3 years, but they're increasing again, so there's a $400,000 adjustment there. 2 police officer positions were built into the base months ago in terms of developing the budget, so that's included. Debt service and some tax sharing agreements that we have with some of our business partners are also increasing. We discussed the equipment replacement. Department supplementals, we had $10 million in requests from departments for increased funding, and we're able to fund about $1.5 to $2 million. There's some other items spread out in these other categories. And so, as you can see, there was much more need and many more requests than there was funding available. But all told, this is how you get to the $16.5 million expense budget for next fiscal year. So now for the recommendations in the budget by strategic planning goal. In the public safety area, about 53% of the general fund is dedicated to public safety. That is for police, fire, and marine safety. So you can see here in the pie chart, more than half of the resources in the general fund are for public safety services and programs, with the remaining departments here comprising the rest. So non-departmental, which is the next largest category, is basically debt service for bonds and utilities and citywide costs that don't relate to a particular department, followed by public works at about 10% of the budget, community services at about 4%, and then all of the other departments range between 3% and less than 1% here. In terms of public safety, we're really excited about the proposal in the police department in particular. Through a creative funding approach, we'll be able to add the presence of the equivalent of 5 police officers back into sworn and patrol-related duties. This is accomplished through a 2-pronged approach. First, as mentioned in the earlier slide, the budget adds funding for 2 police officer positions. And then here is where the creative strategy comes in. It also adds funding for 3 community services officers, which will thereby free up 3 police officers to patrol-related activities. And so the combination of this creative funding approach for 2 officers and 3 community services officers will essentially add 5 more police officers to sworn or patrol-related duties. There's also a recommendation to increase police dispatch operations by 2 positions. And we also implemented a commensurate reduction in the overtime budget. So we could reduce overtime by bringing on the additional staff for a net neutral effect there. The budget also adds $50,000 in the fire department for a new standard recovery evaluation. It permanently increases the junior lifeguard program funding by about $50,000 to improve the instructor to student ratios and make sure that the youth are safe.
Does that correspond with an increase in fees for the junior lifeguard?
The increase in fees for the junior lifeguard program was actually implemented in 2013, but we didn't permanently adjust the budget for the
So, but that's
higher.
offset.
It is offset. It is offset. And we also provide funding for a new lease purchase for Emergency One. I think it's a fire truck, not a fire engine. I hope it was an engine. Oh, I always get that wrong. Sorry. Fire engine. A little more detail on the police department items. We have the 2 new additional police officer positions coupled with the 3 CSOs and the 2 communication operators in the dispatch operation. In this item here, there is a police officer and a parking control officer for whom we received special revenues or grant funds. Those funds have gone away, and so now the general fund needs to support those positions to maintain staffing at current levels. Animal contract increases, some increases for the aircraft, the helicopter program, to make sure that the aircraft are upgraded and in good working condition. Also, an additional fuel allowance for an additional 1,000 hours of air support. Upgrades to computers and technology, new vehicles, 26 new vehicle purchases, the lobby security project to enhance the police department's lobby and their security there, and then various other smaller changes for a combined total of about $3 million in new funding. In the fire department, there is the lease, I got it right here. For the fire engine, the permanent increase for the junior lifeguard program and standards of cover. There is an increase in the Metro City's JPA budget, medical billing contract increases for our ambulance services, some equipment and supplies, the improvement of, I believe it's 2 of our lifeguard towers, refurbishing oil wells, which the fire department oversees, some mobile data computer units to improve performance in the field, and then for Fire Station 8 at Heil, a renovation there for that fire station for about $1 million in total. In terms of quality of life enhancements in this budget, there is a retitling of the Planning and Building Department to Community Development to have more of a community development type of focus. There's a Deputy Director position that's established. There's no net increase in the table of organization. There is 1.5 FTE decrease to offset this, so 1.5 positions will be eliminated to accommodate this position for a net neutral effect. The budget also provides additional funding to improve the beach going experience, and so we have new trash enclosures that are included, as well as additional restroom cleaning during the off-peak periods, since our beaches are such a main attraction. The budget also increases funding for tree trimming, primarily for the new prevailing wage increases that must be paid. And there are some significant renovations here for the library, in particular the central library interior, the entry doors, replacing 70 of the obsolete computers that are here that the public uses extensively, and increasing the materials budget as well for additional books, and also sand replenishment at Huntington Harbor beaches. And these, again, this is not an all-inclusive list, it's some of the major highlights. In the area of economic and financial sustainability, the budget still continues our commitment to the three-pronged approach to reduce our unfunded liabilities. And so we still have the same amount of funding for the retiree medical plan, the 25 to 10, where we shorten the amortization period for that unfunded liability from the 25 to 10 years. Same for retiree supplemental, and so those are pretty static there. And we funded another $1 million for the CalPERS 1=5, where we could add $1 million a year in contributions to the safety plan at PERS in order to shrink the amortization period by 5 years, saving taxpayers combined for these 3 programs about $54 million. It also provides full funding for our workers' comp costs. It includes about $250,000 to further reduce our workers' comp liability, and I'm pleased to announce here, just last year for workers' comp, our liability was about $10.5 million. We've been able to bring it down to 9.2, which is much more manageable. And we're hoping that these plans will be discussed them with our rating agency when we're up for renewal of our credit rating. These are the plans that I usually tout with them that help to get us the AAA rating that we receive from Fitch. Also, to ensure compliance with a myriad of federal and state guidelines and rules and laws, we're also recommending a senior payroll technician position be added in the payroll unit. In addition, $210,000 is included for some of the tax sharing agreements that we have for sales tax with Pinnacle Petroleum, and then the hotel tax agreement with Visit HB. That's based on TOT growth and revenue projections. In terms of the status of our reserves, you'll see that they remain stable, which is great, from $54 million last year audited and the year prior. For, well, here's 13-14, sorry, we were able to increase by $61 million here, mostly for some of these contributions for the CalPERS rate increases. We created this reserve. We also set money aside for the City View replacement of that system. And so For the year that was just audited and ended as of September 30th, we had 61 million in reserves, but we will spend down some of these, which we planned to, for one-time purposes. For the senior center, we also paid $1 million towards the CalPERS 1=5 plan. And so we're expecting that for the current fiscal year, we'll end at about 54 million, which is our base of reserves. This category here is the one that the rating agencies look at the most, this 25 million. It's still not at 2 months of expenditures, which is the goal. That number is closer to 35 million. And so still a little ways away from that, but with a base of 54 million, it's a solid network to protect us from unanticipated consequences, if you will. In the area of CIP and infrastructure, the all funds budget for the CIP is 27.5 million. Just to make sure that we're on the same page with nomenclature, the CIP program incorporates many funding sources. So a portion of the CIP is the general fund, grants, Measure M, which is sales tax based, the TIF, water funds, sewer funds. Prop 42 is very, very small. It was a larger component of it, but it has been cut by the state. And then gas tax, which can be used for street repairs, etc. And so for all of these funding sources combined, there's about a $27.5 million capital program planned for next year, and that detail is in the larger 500-page book, but it does have its own section, and it's actually very easy to read because it's based by project and it gives you specifics on each initiative. There are continuing appropriations for the senior center, so we would continue the funding for that for any amounts yet not spent. Some of the highlights include the Warner Avenue gravity sewer improvement, again the police department lobby, security enhancement project, pier piling, cleaning and maintenance there, and then arterial roadways, dam replenishment, concrete improvements, which are the sidewalks, campground expansion at Sunset Vista, and other projects. Also in terms of the park improvements, Clegg Stacy playground improvement is also included to replace a 25-year-old equipment there and to meet ADA requirements. We wanted to switch the conversation to infrastructure because the CIP is all funds. The infrastructure requirement that's in the charter relates specifically to general fund contributions for infrastructure, and it's based on a 5-year rolling average. The general fund, we calculate this separately. The separate calculation that's done in addition to the budget does exceed the 15% requirement for 15-16. It contains about 35.1 million in combined funding among all the departments, but primarily public works, for infrastructure improvements and maintenance, and includes about 3.2 million of that 35 million is for new capital projects. For arterial roadway is about $1 million for some street improvements there, dam replenishment, etc. The roadway projects that will undergo as part of the infrastructure spending will help to maintain our PCI of 76, which is a good PCI. I recall when we were down at 71 just a few years ago, so this is a great improvement. So what are some of the challenges and opportunities? I'm going to wrap this up here. We do have additional funding coming from the state, about 1.6 million by the end of this year, and 4.5 million coming next year. Here are some recommendations. These aren't exhaustive or all-inclusive, and the council may have different recommendations, but if we are to receive the one-time funding from the state, mostly related to the unwinding of the same triple flip I mentioned earlier, here are some suggestions on how to make a larger down payment on some things in order to reduce annual debt service costs in the future. So not financing the fire truck and fire engine is an option. Paying a portion of our 800 megahertz project outright instead of financing the full 9 million. Utilizing some of the funds to do our citywide streetlight retrofit instead of financing the entire cost. And or combination of all these, creating a Section 115 trust to continue expediting paying down on unfunded liabilities, which will free up funding in the annual budgets because our annual contributions will come down for the smaller plans. not for PERS, for the smaller plans. Unfunded liabilities overview here. So our CalPERS unfunded liability is $308.2 million based on the last actuarial report received from PERS. We're at about a 69.7% funded status, so still not at 70%. The 1=5 plan, where we deposit $1 million more every year, is specifically for the safety portion of the plan, which if we continue that for the next 25 years, we will have saved taxpayers about $54 million there. The miscellaneous plan is business as usual. In the retiree medical area, if you look at the CAPR, you'll see a $5.9 million unfunded liability, but we did pay that off as of September 30th, so the next CAPR will show hopefully zero to a very small amount in that category. But then a new unfunded liability will come in due to a new actuarial standard, where we'll have to recognize the unfunded liability for our HEMCA, or a safety-related retiree medical program, and we'll pay that off over 10 years. Our retiree supplemental plan is at 62% funded status. This used to be 42 or 43% just a few years ago, just about 4 years ago. So we've made significant improvements there. And then workers' compensation was 10.5, is down to 9.2, so improving there. The next CAPR for the next fiscal year should show reductions in retiree medical and it's probably retiree supplemental. These are our FTEs versus our year-over-year PERS costs. You can see that our PERS costs are still increasing, even though, so you see it's a pretty steep climb, and which will continue even though our staffing is less. So we're still not at pre-recession levels in terms of staffing. We're well under, but our pension costs continue to rise. And I'll skip right to, well, here's an important point. You've seen the slides where we show the increases over the next few years. There is one important caveat here. CalPERS, in addition to the 4 changes they've already implemented, they're thinking of yet other changes to make to increase contributions in the plan. They believe their 7.5% estimated annual earnings rate is too high. They believe it increases the volatility of the plan. They want to reduce the volatility of their portfolio, which means if you're not earning 7.5% in the market, and you're not taking the risk in your portfolio choices and your investments to achieve that, then all employers will need to add contributions in. This is a very important change. They're still talking about it. There's a meeting in August that I may go to Sacramento to participate in the discussions about, but even just a 50 basis points change, going from 7.5% to 7%, would be about $3.5 million for us per year. It's a very significant change if PERS goes down this path, and very costly. Here's a projection of our PERS rates over the next few years. You'll see that it's almost a doubling by the time we get to 21-22, and that's before the volatility index gets introduced, if the board so chooses. And so we'll have significant cost increases. This is the annual cost on an all funds basis that's built into the 15-16 budget, and then you see the ramp up from there. So very significant increases. We're expecting that any revenue enhancements over the next few years, just improve economy if there is, would have to go towards paying these costs first. So just to recap here, the budget increases funding for public safety services. It essentially adds 5 police officers to sworn duties through the creative funding approach. It also provides funding for quality of life enhancements at our libraries and beaches. It eliminates 2 of the city's 3 retirement and funded liabilities in 10 years, so we're continuing those plans. Also funds infrastructure improvements to the roadways and parks, and exceeds the 15% requirement, and enhances compliance with laws and regulations, promoting further financial sustainability and long-term viability. Here's our budget calendar. We introduced the budgets to the council last week. We're here today on July 13th. There'll be another opportunity to hear more about the budget on July 20th. August 17th, we'll give a 5-year projection, our long-term financial plan. And then September 8th is the first opportunity for a council public hearing and budget adoption, with the 21st being the alternate, all in anticipation of the new fiscal year beginning October 1. that concludes my presentation. And before I forget, because I'll kill myself later, I wanted to just highlight my staff that worked so hard on this budget. We have Carol Molina Espinoza in the back. She's our budget manager. She's extremely dedicated. Joshua Rosenbaum and Paulina Flores, they're also on the budget team and just put in many, many, many hours for you to have what you have in the budget and all of the recommendations that we presented to you today. So thanks again to the team.
Any questions? On the 10.3 million you had for our TOT, is that our money after we give the tax return or before?
It's before, so it's the gross amount that's booked in revenue.
What's the percentage we give the?
It's 10.
10? Okay. Also, the 2% labor adjustment, what is that?
So we built into the budget and across the board 2% labor adjustment as a placeholder because our contracts are all expiring on September 30th.
And that was negotiated?
No.
So why are we creating the council?
Well, we discussed this on the call.
Yeah, and I asked the question. That's well, we got an answer.
It's a placeholder, that's all, it's a starting point. But the preliminary budget, we're gonna start with something.
We've been very careful in like talking about transparency and making sure we do everything right, and this is preempting us right off. I mean, you can budget it as a surplus or something else, but just saying that, you're preempting negotiations.
Well, again, for budget purposes, we've got something.
You can put it somewhere else, and we know that we'll have to pull from somewhere, or as a surplus. I just don't think it's
just the way it's labeled that you're talking.
Yeah.
I think Lorianne and her staff deserve All right, we're ready now to proceed on what you're going to be doing in the next 6 months in terms of your strategic plan. And I think that this presentation that Lorianne always makes before you make your recommendations is important. What you're going to do is you're going to have 30 minutes in your small groups, and you'll be drafting objectives for the next 6 months, and then when we come back to the large group, it's the city council only this time. This is a change. That we'll be going through the objectives and deciding whether those objectives are what they want to have. The objectives relate to each goal. Gail, do you mind putting up just some of those? So you're going to see that she's got where you have goals, 5 goals stated from. And as you develop your objectives, then and give them to us during that 30-minute period, then they'll be put up here. And then you'll have the group review. So what we're going to be doing now is we've already reviewed the 3-year goals. I just put that out of process. But for the objectives are very specific and measurable. And I'll put this over here so that Gail sees them. The latest date for any of them will be January 15th. And each objective has to have a date. And don't put them all January 15th. You're going to phase them in. Who's going to be accountable, and if it's a management team member, it's their position. If it's the mayor or council, you use their name. If there's more than 2 people that are going to be accountable, you need to have the lead. If you have a group of people that are responsible for an objective and you don't indicate a lead to be the convener and to report in monthly the progress, then usually there's not a whole lot that gets done. So if there's 2 people, the 2 of them can work it out and be monitoring and reporting out. And then make sure that you have a specific measurable outcome. Now what you're going to be doing first, would you all just hit your matrices, because you need those right now. And in fact, I borrowed one because there was thank you, Jill. What you're going to do first is the group is going to, you're going to review the objectives that were done previously. Now, you need to review those whether they're done or they're not done, because it brings up to speed the group on what's already been done and what's in process. So when you look at the first one, if you're working on improved quality of life, there's 2 of them that at least a month ago, they were still on target. What they will decide, the small group, what they will recommend, not decide, what they will recommend is whether or not those go forward. And in strategic planning, nothing is set in concrete. And so if an objective has been worked on and you don't think that's the best use of your time, then you don't give it to Gail and me to put up here. And then if you do think it's a good, yes, that's moving forward, that seems to be appropriate to accomplishing this goal, then you're going to need a recorder in each group. And the recorder could just draw a line through the date and put a new date on it and hand it to us. You don't have to bother writing it all over again. On the other hand, if you reword the objective, reword the people's name, we'll have you put that on a 3x5 card to give to us. Because it's very hard to work with it if there's writing this all over this sheet. So the first thing, and you're only reviewing the goal that you're working on. Each group has its own goal. So review the prior objectives before you write any new objectives. The new objectives, if needed, you're going to have to put on a 3x5 card. So what you're going to do is one goes on per card. And oh, by the way, when you do the carryovers, you notice there's two here. And if you decide to carry both of them over, as soon as you decide to carry over one of them, hand it to Gail or me. We do not want you to waste your time, even if we were lasting until 3. We don't want you to sit there and have to watch us write. So let's say you give it to, you get done with it, you give it to us, and then the recorder looks on somebody else's sheet. And then when you decide on the second one, then you turn that in. So the key is that you're turning them in and not giving them to us in batches. With the new objective 1 on a 3x5 card, I'll bring that around to you. Use this format. Note a key word from the goal instead of writing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which begins to make people think that it's in order, or A, B, C, D, E. Just put life or infrastructure, financial, safety, and service. Just put that at the top of the card. Now, why that's important is that you've gotten really fast at writing objectives. Suddenly, we have a fistful of objectives. We don't have any idea where it goes, then we have to ask all of you to stop and find out where did this objective goes. So be sure you put label it so we know, and then turn it in as soon as it's done. So the process is this. Step number 1, get a recorder who's going to write legibly. We're going to move this over, way up here, it'll stick because it's very heavy. And the first thing, you get a recorder. We'll bring the 3x5 cards to you. Step number 2, review the prior objectives. Don't write objectives first, new ones first, because you need to see how much work are we carrying over. And remember, you are not fully staffed in terms of your needs. So keep that in mind all the time. Every objective that you write needs to be SMART. We use this acronym every time we do this. So every objective needs to be S-M-A-R-T. S means specific, and hopefully strategic. A strategy is an approach to get a desired result. Every objective, orange peel walls. M is measurable. If you can't measure it, it's not an objective. So by such and such a day, the department head will recommend to the city council for action. You can't say for approval. That would be in conflict with the Brown Act because it wasn't on the agenda as an item. Or you can say for consideration. Such and such presented to the council, you've got a date. Or by a certain date, there will be 3 community workshops on something. Just make sure it's measurable. A is attainable, and here's the one that you've already talked a lot about. Attainable means, do you have the resources? That means people, that means money, that means equipment. If you don't have it, and you're not going to have it by January, then don't write the objective. You don't want to set up yourself to fail. R is relevant. Relevant means the objective is not just busy work. One of my husband's favorite quotes is never confuse motion to progress. You can be moving, standing still. So be sure that it's relevant. And then last but not least, timely. Is the timing right? And is there time to do it? So as you're drafting your objectives, you need to keep these criteria in mind so that, it'll be doable. So review again. Get the recorder, we'll give you the card, review the prior objectives, one at a time. Don't give us 2 or 3 all at once, one at a time. And then new ones, put on a 3x5 card, be sure and label it with a word that relates to your goal. What questions do you have about process?
Marilyn, we do have some topics.
Oh, thank you, I forgot about that. I understand you have some topics. And so look at that list. Does everybody have that list?
Yes, in the agenda.
Okay, in the agenda, look, if there's a topic there that relates to the goal you're writing, then that means it's there for you to consider writing an objective around that topic. So be sure you look at that and see which particular questions might be relevant.
Or is the topic list too long?
Yeah.
For the public, it's under, I believe it's under H, and then it lists topics to be discussed. So if you have an agenda, which they're in the back there, it lists about 8 different items under H.
So the idea is not to sit there and talk a lot about the topic, because it'll use up your 30 minutes. But instead, look at it and say, does this relate to our goal as a possible objective? And then the group decides whether or not that needs to be turned into an objective. Thank you, Fred, because we've never had that list before, so I didn't have it in my head. Anything else? All right, it's now 10:30. You have till 11. Typically, there's usually about 3 to 5 carryovers. Every 10 minutes, I'll tell you an objective should be coming in so that you don't get bogged down. So just circle your group, and if Kathleen wants to listen, you can pull your chair closer to council, table. Okay, Barbara, question?
Yeah.
Not on that one.
Oh,
well, then we go back.
Okay. Regarding, does that include effective use of city-owned streetlights for distributed antenna systems and telecom industries, partnership revenue possibilities?
I'll come after that.
Okay.
This will be first.
All right.
Streetlights first.
Okay, so this is strictly owning them. Okay, council, mayor council, this look okay? This one all right? By December 15th? Okay, by November 1, the Public Works Director will present to the city manager the beach promenade rehabilitation plan. So this
Parking garage.
for parking garage?
There's a beach promenade parking garage.
Take this out?
No, in between there. Parking garage.
Parking.
Do we call it the main promenade?
Or main promenade.
The one I don't know about?
M-A-I-N?
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, do you want to be in on that?
Sure.
Since it's yours. Or you can do it.
She is generous. Okay, so by November 1st, the Public Works Director and Community Services Director will present to the city manager the main promenade parking structure rehabilitation plan.
Or it could be the assistant.
I'm sorry, Janine, you got it. They love me there.
I'll work with Ken on that.
Is this just a report, or is he supposed to do something with it?
Well, there's some funding and there's a needs assessment, so we're going to develop a plan and we're going to implement each of those pieces.
Okay, so this just goes to you, doesn't it go to city council?
Yeah, well, I'll go to the council.
After you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, but this time it goes to you. Okay, council, are you okay? Yes. Jim, question?
Jim wants to be on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll never spell your name right again. City manager, oh, I can't go see that city manager. Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem. Okay, and I'm not going to do that to Jim. He's got a full name. P-O-D-I-S, P-O-D-I-S, I know. Okay, so who's the lead? We've got 3 people. You got more than 2. Okay, Janine says she'll do it. Okay, so now it reads, by November 1st, the Community Services Director is the lead, Public Works Director, and Jim will present to the city manager not the, it's a main, right? Because it doesn't exist now. Okay. All right.
Okay, I just,
Go ahead.
I was part of this discussion when we had like a big committee in 2005, 6, 7. So if Mayor Pro Tem gets to go,
You want to
by
go.
November, then the mayor wants to go. So
You both want to go.
yeah, I don't care if my name's
Doesn't Ken want to go too?
We'll just add you.
I don't know, I'm there. I didn't know.
Where are you?
Okay.
I want to go.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
The way we did it in the past, just for information, is we did it through the downtown EDC, and so Dave was actually there as well.
That's so good.
So what was that, Dave?
Way back in the early 2000s.
Do
the
I add
20th
you?
century.
Sure.
And then that is who the current EDC is. Yeah.
Economic Council.
So you can just abbreviate instead of putting all our names, just put the economic development.
Shouldn't OBD be involved then too?
See when I started?
Yeah.
Shall I say everybody?
No, he's not. No.
Economic Development Council.
They're supporting you.
Oh, is Economic Development Committee? Okay. So it's the Community Services Director, Public Works Director, working with the Economic Development Committee.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to put the, okay. Gail, you don't have to put the council members, just because they're in this, working with.
Sorry to volunteer you, Dave.
Yeah.
He's lying, he's lying. Okay.
Blame me.
Any questions, council? All right, I'm gonna move on. October 1, the Public Works Director will prioritize the city's paving projects to increase PCI to 80 and present to the city council for information. Do you all know what PCI is? I don't. What is PCI? Oh, okay. Is this clear to everybody? Relevant to the goal? Measurable? And
Action or information?
Pardon? Yeah, do you want action on this one? Travis, Fred's asking, do you need this for action rather than just information? You want them to take a position on what you're suggesting? Or action?
What is PCI now? That's what it says. 50?
Well, 76? 76 Okay, January 1. Everybody ready? By January 1, the Public Works Director will present to the City Council, City Manager for action, a plan to address the infrastructure, landscaping, and maintenance needs in Central Park. Should this go to you, Fred, or the City Council?
We'll go to the council. It's all about funding. So a lot of this will actually. You want to see announcement or something together.
In this 6 months, well,
You don't have to be.
In this 6 months, it's just to you first?
Yeah, and we got to look at part of your budget or something.
Yeah, and then in January, then we do an action. Okay, clear? Relevant, measurable?
Yeah.
Okay, and that date, Travis, you're still comfortable with that date?
Yeah.
Okay, group that put these together, put your hand up, and we'll give you a applause. Perfectly acceptable for you to applaud them too.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
now we're going to the next goal. Strengthen economic and financial sustainability. Okay, you're going to need your matrix again because we're going to have to read from some of that. We'll look first on page C. Number 3, which says the planning and building director, finance director, and the city attorney, who's the lead, will evaluate legalizing and regulating vacation rentals and make a recommendation to the city council for action. And they felt that that could be done by December 1st. Is that still valid? Council, are you okay with that? This is vacation rentals. Okay. Number 8, turn to the next page. Other carrying over. This one says the assistant city manager, the information services director working with the consultant will assess our current Wi-Fi, broadband, and fiber optic opportunities to attract additional businesses and report the results to the city council. And they felt that was still valid, but it would need to be till December. Council, are you okay with that? Is wrong? Okay. Number 9. The finance director will develop and present to the city council for action plans to accelerate improving the funded status of the city's retirement and workers' compensation plans. Questions about that? Clear? Relevant? Okay, and they're suggesting that that would be done, number 9, by January 1st. Slow me down if you need to. We're moving around. We're doing fine. So if I'm going too fast, you've got questions, I want you to...
Is the purpose of changing that date so that we continue to do that as we
Yes.
do the goals? Because,
Okay. Number 10, the city manager and finance director will develop a plan and present to the city council for action to maintain, I think will present to the city council for action a plan to the city, will present to the city council for action a plan to maintain the city's AAA credit rating. Right? I think, Gail, do you need me to go over that? That it's just a rewording on that.
Oh.
Yeah, I think, okay.
Which one?
You're going to change it?
Marilyn?
Yes.
We add the word help maintain because it's,
You can't insure it?
yeah, we can't.
Okay, okay. Gail, I'm going to write this as number.
Or just read it.
Number 10. Okay, number 10 will now say, by December 1st, the city manager and the finance director will present to the city council for action a plan to help maintain the city's AAA credit rating. Is that right?
Yeah.
Number 11 reads that the deputy director of the Office of Business Development working with Visit Huntington Beach, the Marketing and Visitors Bureau, will recommend options for the city council for action for enhancing revenue from terrorism. For tourism. Now you probably get a lot of people coming here. Okay, is this okay? Everybody all right? Okay, now these are the new ones. By September,
Excuse me, on that last one you just said, is there a date change on that, or?
I'm sorry, it's right here, January 1.
Oh, thank you.
And you'll get all of this this afternoon. By September 1, the finance director will present to the city council, it didn't say whether it was action or what, options to expedite the payment of unfunded liabilities. It must be action, right? Present to the city council for action. Options to expedite the repayment of unfunded liabilities.
Yes.
Questions? See the relevance? Measurable? And September 1 still okay? Gloria? September 1 still?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was just,
Okay.
I felt like a duplicate, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, if it is, we'll just change it. Okay, by September 1, the finance director will present to the city council for actions, options for the use of proposed one-time funding from the triple flip unfunded mandates. Council, do you all understand what those are? Everybody okay? All right. And does this seem to be a relevant new objective? Questions? Scott or Gloria, did you hear me talking about something? Is there something else you need to say?
There's right timing, because we don't have, the triple flips, which is the largest portion of 4.5 million, we don't have it yet. But it's a plan in case it's ready.
Right.
So
that was the point. Was
then what you say, then you say like this, contingent.
Well, I don't think it's waiting for the money, it's that we're doing it. Wasn't, we were having a plan in place. Oh, when the money came in.
You have a plan for disaster, even though the disaster hasn't happened, so things. Okay.
And it's triple flip and unfunded mandates.
Oh, I wondered. I thought, what are triple flip? Good. I didn't want to ask that. Okay. By November 1, the assistant city manager will present to the city council probably for action a plan to use the city's portion of successor agency proceeds for economic development. Do you know how much you're getting?
15% of whatever proceeds.
From all parties. Any future.
But, so that confuses me though, because wouldn't we have to pay off our debt first?
This is new properties. So
Right, and then it's
50% of
just
any
property
sale.
tax that goes into, I mean, would we?
50% would be a lump sum for a one-time sale of property.
Oh, okay, the lump sum. And
It's
we
that
don't,
lump sum we get, and they were wanting to
don't we have to pay
put
the
some
debt
of
part
it.
of it first though?
No, this is be over and above that.
Oh, okay.
Other questions? Be sure to ask those questions, because you may get asked yourself as a council member or mayor.
So the thought was to put some of it back into economic development since there is no, redevelopment basically, that we have some funds available there, not necessarily.
I just wanted to understand the difference.
Okay.
It's a one-time lump sum and we don't have to pay off our debt.
Is it okay if I write action here? Action. Okay, any other questions about this one before we applaud and move on?
Can I add one?
Yes, sure.
Well, I don't know, the 2% that was in the budget alternative.
Why don't you just
The
dictate
2%
afterward
for the,
will do what?
salary,
Will what?
2% of the budget allocated to salary. Alternatives presented in the budget or any comes back to the budget.
Have that by Monday.
Okay, we'll allocate 2% of the budget. Is it
No.
2%
It's not 2% of the budget.
No, it's a 2% allocation.
Thank you. Allocation, right?
Right.
Continue.
Or, what was it, what did you say?
Staff
Salary. It was a set aside. For salaries.
Set aside? That's it?
Right. Not great, well, it just different options to do with that money. Yeah, recategorize. Recommend options. Recommended different options.
Budget enhancement funds.
Where did you come out?
Might go to salaries, it might go to Shark bait.
Shark bait?
Shark bait.
Are you talking about other options than the 2% for salaries? Is that what you're
Yes,
talking about?
different
So
options.
you want
With
different
that,
options?
that 2% that was set aside, different options. Provide city council different options.
I may not have got this right at all. Let's see if I got this right. By some certain date, probably the finance director will recommend to the city council for action options for using the 2% for salaries as shown in the preliminary 2015-16 budget. Is that right? Okay. And Lorianne, how much time do you need to do that? Sounds like pretty fast.
Well, we come back July 20th, and then we come back again.
August, we're doing August.
Okay. What do you need for time, Lorianne? August 1st? Or, I mean, you can have a date other than that.
August 3rd.
At the August 3rd city council meeting?
It should be the
It should be 17th. August 17th.
August 17th.
So are you presenting the budget on the 20th with the preliminary?
Yes.
So if you do it on the 20th, it's gonna be there, and then it's not gonna be there if you do it on the 17th. It'd be better to take it out before all the employees see it on in there. Is that what you're thinking, or do you don't mind it being in there that first week?
I don't mind, I mean, I think it should be optional. So I would say the 20th if Lori can do it. Next meeting?
It's,
Well, it's up to her, she can tell me.
yeah, I think you could try this.
So it's the August 20th city council meeting?
July.
Oh, the July 20th city
Yeah.
council.
Oh, it's already.
Right.
Doesn't matter, like, would you be okay with 2%?
Well, okay, so at the July 20th city council meeting, the finance director will recommend to the city council for action options for using the 2% for salaries as shown in the preliminary budget. Is that how you want to say it? Set aside?
It's 3 million, basically, so that, basically it's the 3 million, yeah. Budget. Yeah, surplus. Budget. 3 million budget allocation. Funding.
Budget allocation.
Discretionary fund?
Discretionary?
Discretionary.
It's set aside. Okay. I'm not sure whether you all agreed on this yet. We'll recommend to the city council for action options for using the $3 million budget discretionary fund.
Budget set aside.
$3 million budget set aside.
Yes.
Lori? And that doesn't mean you still won't get back to the salaries. It's just that it's options and the council's made a decision. Okay, one more time. At the July 20th, 2015 City Council meeting, the Finance Director will recommend to the City Council for action options for using the $3 million budget set aside.
Correct.
Is that right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So, the group who put these together, put your hands up. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next goal. This is enhance and maintain public safety. Okay. But I'll give you back your record after we get through the last one. Thank you for letting me have it. All right, enhance and maintain public safety. By January 15th, the fire chief will complete and submit to the city manager for review. And he put action question mark, so you'll need to answer that, Fred. A standards of cover, did I write that right?
Yes.
Standards of cover report. Do you want to tell, I don't know, Council, do you know what standards of cover is?
Standards of cover is really an international process that looks at two things: distribution and concentration of resources. So it's in the proposed budget now. This is a carry forward of the strategic planning objective from last year that looks at where are our fire stations, how is our coverage, and what could we do better.
Okay, clear? Okay, relevant, everybody? Council, relevant, measurable, and the 15th work stream. Okay. So September 1, the Assistant City Manager, working with the Police Chief, Fire Chief, and IS Director, will present a plan to the City Manager for consideration. I double wrote. To complete critical police and fire technology needs. That clear? Relevant? I know at this point you're sick of me asking that, but we've got to do this. Measurable, and Ken, I wanted to ask you about the date I was looking for you. Is that date doable?
Jack, what do you think?
No.
Second month? October. Yeah, October 1.
October 1, is that better? Is that doable? Yeah. Okay. By January 1, the police chief will present to the city manager for consideration alternative plans for police firearms training facilities. Question? Clear? Relevant, measurable? And January 1st, that's still okay? Okay. By October 1st, Mayor Pro Tem, that's Jim, Finance Director, Police Chief, and the City Manager will identify potential new funding sources for new police officer positions and make a recommendation to the City Council for, I didn't know whether it was direction, action, I forgot to ask you guys.
Action.
Action. Questions? Comments? Clear? Over? Okay, October 1st, Jim? Okay. By January 15th, the assistant city manager, the lead fire chief and police chief will submit to the city manager for consideration in the 2016-17 budget?
Yeah, because the 15-16 is already going to
council. Okay. A review of critical fire and marine safety positions.
Main thing would be take out the police chief.
I can tell the fire chief at meeting. I shouldn't be out there. Mine's in the other one, but I can.
Fire and marine safety are both in the fire department.
Since I facilitate your retreat, I do know that.
Just scratch out police.
Do we really take out police? I thought I was just dumping on you. Okay.
He was. Yeah.
Okay, assistant city manager and fire chief will submit to the city manager. And this is for consideration because you just wanted to think about it?
No.
You want action?
I do. Whether he does.
Yeah. For action.
Consideration and just action. One way or another.
Action is either yes or no, or maybe wait. Okay, any questions about this one? Okay, anything else that's been left out that needs to be addressed? All right, Ruth that did these, put your hands up please, and we'll applaud you. Now I'm feeling guilty when I realize that there's only one goal left and it's noon. I've just been pushing a little hard, haven't I? Sorry. See what good high achievers you are? Last goal to look at, but not last in priority. Yeah, I'm going to put these up. I'm putting these up because we always do the review of these at the end, so I'm ready to do that. Oh, good idea. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Okay.
Marilyn, can we go in reverse order? Can we go in reverse order?
If you want. Sure.
Because the newest concept may need some additional conversation.
Okay, so which one do you can start there? Okay. Now remember, this doesn't have any prior objectives because this is your new goal. And so you're going to probably have some questions about some of this, and that's why they're asking me to do the last one first. So, enhance and maintain city service delivery. Now, this one says by September 1st, the city manager working with the
Community Relations Officer.
The Community Relations Officer and the police and fire PIO will identify a methodology to improve community outreach and education and advance notice on city projects and events. You want to say something about this?
Sure. So I believe one of the topics that were included in the agenda talked about improved communication to the public regarding the timing and action that the council would be considering at their meetings. And so one of the objectives that came out of that kind of a discussion is this may be a means to try and identify how we can improve communicating to the public about upcoming projects so that the community has enough advance notice to know what's coming to the council for action. Also too, there's a way that we do it now, and I believe it's when we have a new project, we need to mail a certain distance, 500. Why can't we just, I'd just like to see the level of us informing our residents of the community be better. Why do we just have to stop at 500? I mean, is there a reason for that? Or maybe we can do it through Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, all these different ways to get the information out. And
the mailing's expensive, and where do you stop?
No,
so
I
that's
get that.
But I
I'm
think
just saying,
there are certain projects where we need to move it off of the public notice page of the paper and highlight it elsewhere.
Correct.
I agree with you.
The reason I was using the example of 500, okay, if it's expensive, then how about if we did this instead, which would be maybe a Facebook account just designed for that? Or I don't know. That's why I'm suggesting that we discuss it, because I don't know what the best way is. Maybe Jack does, or maybe we can get Kelly in. I don't know.
The police department does a really good job of getting information out, and a lot of people follow that. So could we have a development equivalent?
Well, we have the CRO and the fire and police, PIO.
Yeah.
We don't have one anymore.
Okay. So anyway, I don't know.
I think the other aspect we were looking at is the miscommunication that goes out, because we're not sending information out, the public's getting a portion of it or seeing it, and then it spreads like wildfire. So we'd like to be able to have the public have accurate information.
So they could have a resource to go to. Wait, is this real? Sort of like a scoops thing, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
Well, and also working on what the message is, to have it be accurate, but how it's presented, because I gotta be honest, if we just put the opportunity zones on a Facebook thing, I'm not sure the outcome would have been any different, the way it was presented. But
Yeah, I don't.
But if we work with, in our community information officer on how the message is crafted, that could be helpful.
Okay, council, what questions do you have?
Well, we've got the existing city website. If we just repeatedly at council mention that the information is available on there and that we put it on, if so many people are online, that would seem like the easiest way to do it.
One of the things we talked about today is you can subscribe to different things. You can subscribe to the agenda, to the manager report. So maybe Jack needs to be involved in this too, is can you subscribe to something so that you're interested, and then you're going to be getting all the notices and filter out what you're doing.
Okay, do you see, council, the relevance of this to enhancing and maintaining city service delivery?
Yes.
You see that relationship? Okay, and because I want to talk about the who last, or fourth. Okay, so it seems to be relevant. Is it measurable? It's identifying, but it isn't doing anything with it, so it would have to be presented to somebody, or, you know, in other words, it's like
One of
a
those things we don't know if it works until the next issue comes up.
That's right.
And if we knew what that issue was going to be, we would take care of it.
Well, the community, does we want feedback from the community if it's working or not?
We have to have Jack, sorry, Jack, but we need to have him in there too.
Yeah, and that's why, that's really,
yes,
that's
that's
really
It's a message, then
this
it's not,
is
it's not
the
a technology thing making them. Well, I mean, what if the website, what if the city website, if we're gonna enhance that, and maybe put buttons on it or something, or make it a little more obvious? It's kind of hard to navigate that. I mean, don't you maintain the website?
Well, we maintain the website, but the messaging and everything is through the PIO.
Yeah.
I realize that, but to make buttons or something like Barbara's talking about.
So I don't know that he needs to be in the first meeting.
You know, like you put a button on the website.
We need to come up with content, and then he can figure out how to.
Now remember, this is just, whoever is doing this, and I haven't asked you yet for the who, I assume this is bigger than just the city manager, the CRO, and police PIO. But what they're doing is, by this date, they're identifying a methodology to improve it.
You want to put your back on the
Yes.
planning project.
Yes.
I think part of the challenge is when something gets posted on the website 5 days before the hearing, you know, on various websites. I think that's our challenge.
Yeah.
Is how quickly can you respond. That's what the CRO would be helpful too.
Yes.
Okay, so council, first of all, are you buying into
Because
this
we do have a
objective?
lot of the things
Yeah.
you mentioned,
Okay.
right, on our website,
So-
the planning commission agendas, ZA agendas. We post every month a listing of all the projects we're processing. So, yeah, we can look to see how we can enhance it.
So Scott, you're on
I'll
this
work with you.
planning and building director?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jack actually.
Jack, are you okay with this?
Great.
Being on this?
Yeah. Posting things.
IS? Director. Okay, who else? Is there anybody else that's critical to be on part of this? Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to fire one of
Put
the
somebody in there.
That's what I was gonna say, I'll just take your PIO, this will be the police fire.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
fire,
fire.
what do you want to say, fire?
Fire representative.
Okay,
Fire representative.
I think we need the city attorney on there too.
There's something to do.
Legal issues.
Okay, now, is the city manager the right one to be the lead? Do you think so?
Yeah, Julie.
He pays me a lot to always say that. Okay.
What's that around? CRO.
CRO is the lead.
Working with all those people.
So Gail will be the CRO as the lead. And that'll be working with the planning and building director, IS director, fire representative, fire department
You
resident.
take fire and police representative, even, you stick up CIO, fire and
Police representatives, okay, fire and police representatives.
The city projects and events include like the US Open, activities on the beach.
I think it could even be programs, projects, and events.
Well, yeah, if you want to do that, then all of us could potentially be involved.
That's
in it.
It probably makes more sense to make it a webmaster for IS, because that's the first answer.
Usually what happens is we don't put people that are below the level of you here. It's, you can delegate, but then you're accountable. So, the CRO, is the CRO, it's not a part of this either. So who does the CRO report to? You?
Nice try, Fred.
Well, we're gonna leave it at that one in. But if there could be other people, it's just that these are the people that are accountable.
That's a day-to-day operations thing. Does that need to go to city council for approval, or could you just approve that as?
Yeah, but I want to present whatever the plan is. I want to know what the plan is.
Thank you.
Okay, just that's more teams. All right, September 1, doable, speaking for the CRO, or is it, no?
October 1.
October 1?
Should we have it be information or actionable?
Is it city council?
Well,
getting the
it's quite a ways till October, so
It
it
is.
should be some maybe recent action by that. If you have too much stuff that's just planning and
I agree, I
reports,
just didn't know how
Yeah,
the board was in there.
because you're okay with the action.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, there is a communication committee, they could present to that committee first, that is the committee.
Usually what you do is you have your objective be the last person, unless it's you and you're gonna go to the council. Because, sometimes you've got the planning commission, you've got all these commissions. And if you need me to write in with input from the communications committee, okay. All right, now this is a whole new concept, these next
Can you go to
four.
the September one?
Oh, go that with yours, okay. By September 1, the mayor pro tem, working with the city council member, did I spell that right? I couldn't quite read it.
Close, that's all.
D-I-Z.
Is that spelled right?
D-I-Z.
No, you get it, it's good.
D-E-L-G-L-E-I-Z-E.
G-L.
Okay, we'll explore, identify, and recommend to the city council for action improved methods for bringing council member items forward to the city council agenda. Is this clear?
I am absolutely opposed to that. An elected official, and it's referring to H items, should, a council member item should be able to bring forward anything they want.
You have a processor for that.
Yeah, we have a process, it's the way we discuss things. In
No.
fact, that should have probably been an H item. I mean, that's what I would have done.
Well,
I don't know what that
Yeah, so, yeah, what exactly are you trying to get?
Okay, I'll explain. On a couple of issues that have come up, I have found it to be coming at the meeting, I have no information about it, and I just find it, I feel a little being on the dais, not knowing anything about the item. I'm not trying to restrict anybody. It's just that, for example, in Fountain Valley and Garden Grove, they bring it forward at their meeting. Hey, I want to bring this forward. And another council person votes on it, and then the staff does research and brings it back at the next meeting. I'm not trying to restrict anyone, I'm just saying, I have found it, sometimes I just
Well, I
don't
think
have
it,
information.
I actually like your system better than what you're suggesting for Fountain Valley and Garden Grove, because the council member puts it on the agenda,
and we do have the information before the meeting, so we kind of have a clue that this might be discussed, and if we choose, we can look into it a little bit, or we can wait till the night of. But if a council member brings it up the night of and has to get support from somebody else to have it come back, then we're all blindsided. We had no idea, no information ahead of time. At least this way, we get a few days' notice that someone's going to bring it up.
Oh, we have almost a week.
Well, it depends on. Yeah, we should have a week. I think we maybe need to revisit the timeline. Council members should have it there by agenda review. And we're the only ones with an exception for that. But I feel like what you're saying with Garden Grove and Fountain Valley, I wouldn't know it all.
I just pulled two cities.
Yeah, no, I know, I wouldn't know it all though, you know, so.
It's not for us to determine. I was gonna suggest that staff can look into it and bring back to us how.
But that's what an H item is to ask staff to look into something. And the initial purpose of it was, if we're gonna ask staff to spend more than 4 hours looking into something, that's a budget item where it's spending, I mean, it's a budget item if they spend 10 minutes, but especially at like the 4-hour mark, it was decided years ago that we need to ask council support. Are we willing to have staff use their budgeted labor for that purpose? And so we can't ask them ahead of time because that's the purpose of the agent.
One of the thoughts that came up too was, would it make sense to have two people's name on this, but you had a second, how many times have we sat and the item goes nowhere because there's nobody in the section?
Well, I think that,
Most of it is talk to each. I mean,
it's all
talk to
discussion.
everybody.
I mean, yeah, so maybe the HR does get seconded, but, you know.
Like my last one about this meeting. There was a discussion. I mean, he wanted to bring up the discussion.
I think it was.
What's the viability of this meeting? So there wasn't necessarily an action. I mean, that I was
But we had a
expecting.
good discussion.
But we had a good discussion.
Yeah.
So
And
it's a way
Eric's
to
one
talk
example.
about stuff.
Thank you.
It sounds like there's not consensus to keep this, right?
No.
So.
I would recommend though to council members that, you know, we don't want to violate the Brown Act, but, you know, maybe talk to one other person, get some feedback. Maybe talk to Fred, get a little bit of feedback before you propose it. If you don't like the feedback you get, that doesn't mean you can't put it on there, but just, we are politicians. And you might want to know that somebody's going to have some good input or some support before you put yourself out there. You might choose to do it anyway, and I think that's fine. But just remember, when you're putting yourself out there, you might want to know.
Okay, are you okay with me taking that off? Because the process is consensus, and if there's not consensus, I'll just move on. Okay, now I come here, right?
Yes, so can I introduce it
Sure.
before we talk about the
Yes.
potential objectives? So the budget highlighted the challenges that we face in adding full-time staff to the budget due to the costs. So this concept that has 3 related objectives is one in which we would have a pilot project where departments would work on establishing priority projects that could be completed within 6 months via a project work team. And for example, and I'll give an example, Joan mentioned that we have struggles reconciling the Public Records Act request response process. It's not integrated and it's difficult for everyone to know what to do when we get those requests. So this concept would be one in which departments would submit to the city manager, again, viable projects that can be completed within 6 months via project specifically focused work teams, and those work teams would have specific overview for the project. There would be established outcomes for the project. There would be a specific timeline for the project. There would be specific objectives for each project, and then there would be specifically identified resources that would be needed, whether it's technology, people, whatever blend there would be. And so these next 3 objectives are related to that concept to try and get some priority items done that we do not have funding to hire full-time staff to do.
Jim had a question. What's preventing you from doing that right now?
No money.
So so where is there, so is there funding in there?
That's the very first one.
$1 million?
So $1 million out of one-time money, and if you divide that by the departments, it's only about $77,000 per department.
But I'm not sure really what you mean by that. It sounds, this process is all about identifying specific issues rather than putting out a block of money to use for anything.
So it wouldn't be used for anything. So your office, each department would have to submit a specific project that could be completed by a project work team in 6 months. And your office would then review those projects and give the thumbs up or thumbs down on all of the funding that will be required before the departments could move forward. For example, Joan wanted to collaborate with Michael, and they wanted to establish a 6-month project work team to look at how we can better figure out how to process quickly the Public Records Act requests that we receive. Then they would collaborate to put that project team together, and then you would say, they would tell you how much funding they would need for whatever the items were, and then you would give the green light, and the project would be completed in 6 months. So that way you have a deadline and an outcome that you receive at the end of that 6-month time period.
So for contracted staff or something like that, what would the money be for?
So the money is for whatever the resources are. Let's say there's a software program she needs, or let's say there's training for her people, or let's say she wants to bring in a project work team of 3 part-time folks to work on the resources or flow chart mapping, so you can determine how it currently works and how we can better improve it. It's to do whatever it's necessary to get the project done in the timeline specified.
So you're saying instead of departments or scrambling basically mid-year to find funding to fund a project that comes out, right? Which you've always to have
a little pilot. Yeah. And this would be a pilot, and that's why the request would be one-time money for a one-time pilot project. If the departments were successful in getting their projects funded and completed, then you would actually see the outcomes that would come about as a result of the project work teams.
Also, too, I don't know if all of you know this, but our city really doesn't have a records manager. The city of Irvine has 10 people on that staff. So how are we going to integrate our departments unless we had something like this and we don't necessarily have the money?
And my recommendation was that we look at hiring a records manager, and Michelle rightly said with what, and instead of just putting full-time people on it, she's recommending, instead of saying, one of our objectives in order to enhance service delivery is to get a records manager. She's suggesting a records process, very similar to the business case study you have to do for IS before they would even consider your software.
Okay, I just don't know why, if that's the concern, that we have a records manager, then why don't we just put that forward and, bring it to the budget and put that.
That only solves one department's needs.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that for this ongoing, I just don't understand why it's ongoing. You can't bring the different people together, have a project, you come up with something, then you bring it to Fred, then you have to bring it to us. I mean, I have a problem with throwing $1 million out there and saying, well, we're going to do all these things, but we're not sure exactly what they are. We know about the Public Records Act, but these other things we're just going to put together. You put together a bunch of people in there, and they come together, they decide what they want, they go to Lorianne. Lorianne says, you know what, we don't have the funding for that. Fred comes to us and says, hey, listen, I'm going to put this out, they need funding for this. I mean, I don't know why this has to be separate. It just doesn't make sense to me.
So are you suggesting that we should just hire a records manager then?
I'm saying that that's what we want to do. I mean,
the goal is to integrate.
But she's talking about all different kinds of projects.
That's correct.
To me, this is a different.
Well, then what do we do about a department that has a really important need for just their department, and they can't put a work team together because it's not interdepartmental, and so they don't get their position funded because this $1 million was dedicated to interdepartmental.
Or not that much money. And I'll give an example. In the budget, there were $10 million worth of requests that were made, but only $1.5 million were funded. So there's clearly a gap between the staffing requests of all of the departments here. And so this was a way to try and provide some funding for departments to work on specific priority projects that would provide additional service delivery for the city without tying the city's hands with respect to long-term unfunded liabilities, pension costs, and additional costs of benefits, which happen when you hire permanent staff. So it was a way to get the work done without A, hiring permanent people, and B, creating permanent budgetary dollars that would have to be sustainable over the long term.
I think the challenge is identifying the pot of money without any specific idea of how to spend money. And I can see the concern level is just out there that maybe this should be repackaged and to have staff develop recommendations for city council consideration as part of the mid-year budget. We've got some of these things. I think just to put $1 million out there to be used for whatever purpose is difficult.
Okay, but fair enough, how do you coordinate our departments and lower that $10 million and that 1.5 that gets accomplished? There's obviously needs in all of these different departments.
Well, I think the reality is, we just can't fund that level of need. Our dollars are such that we only have that $1.5 million, so we have to work with what we have.
This is a crazy thought, I'm just gonna throw out there. But I was actually thinking about how we're talking about doing this part of the strategic planning once a year. But I really liked Lorianne's presentation of the budget at this point, especially since other things are coming up before next week's council meeting and stuff. I like having a day where we look at the budget and have the presentation outside of the council meeting. We didn't have the constraints of time, really. What if we included in that, and I'm just tossing a crazy idea out there, some sort of CDBG type look at what those proposals were and give the council some idea and prioritize it. I understand, if there were $10.5 million in requests and we fund $1.5 million of them, I would figure that those were the most important according to staff, but council doesn't even know what the other 9 million requests were. And maybe we would like to have a little bit of money to look at those and have, whether they're teams or individuals, say, this is what we were requesting, and a little bit of money to say, okay, this is a really tough decision, like CDBG faces, or CPEC faces, but